our help. Right after that, I saw a question about paid Zoom events and attendees in certain countries. And I think, yes, Kevin got the list there. There's a list of 8 countries that can have attendees for paid Zoom events today. With that, I'm going to step back into what we're actually going to be going over today, which, like Jeff said, I have been given the okay from our teams to show you the back end of Zoom events as it relates to creating conferences, which is the big button that you don't have right now. It actually, as a show of hands, how many people have already gotten inside a Zoom events license and started playing around with single sessions and with summits? We've got a small handful have started playing with that. Okay. And then how many people have, whether or not you attended on the day of the show, how many people have been inside the Zoomtopia lobby? Okay, good bit more. Sweet. So you guys have already kind of looked around a little bit. So the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and share. I'm going to share my screen of the Zoomtopia lobby over here. One of the first things you'll notice for those of you who were in the show during the show, you noticed that you had lots of different places where you could chat. That's turned off now. We had chat moderation team looking around and watching for bad actors, that sort of thing, moderating that chat during the event hours. Now that we're not staffing it 24/7, we've turned the chat back off. But the lobby is still up for the moment. That's actually going to be going away shortly. All the recordings for Zoomtopia, if you did have sessions that you want to go look at, there were a handful of sessions on Zoom events. Of course, our product and vision keynotes always have a lot of information. That's all going to be moving to zoomtopia.com on Monday. So all of that's being brought up to the top, and that's where it's going to live with the same player we had last year, so that you can go deep link to sessions directly to share them. Lots of other things that we have there. But here within the lobby, this is kind of the heart and soul of Zoom events. This is one of the big differentiating things, particularly with summits and with conferences. You both have the lobby, and that's where you have multiple sessions. So Zoom events really is a wrapper around meetings and webinars. Within Zoom events, you have sessions. You may have just a single session, or you may have multiple sessions, but you have sessions, and those can be either meetings or webinars. That's the Zoom product you already know. Zoom events is a wrapper around that, a way to group, if you have multiple sessions, group them together and provide access between them and kind of the glue that sticks them together. And then if it's just a single event, or if it's it's the ticketing aspect, the registration aspect. As you guys probably caught on, you have to be logged in with a Zoom account to get a ticket to a Zoom event. There's no side door. There's no side door into Zoom events. You have to have a Zoom account. It has to be a Zoom commercial account, no Zoom for Gov. You can't join with a Zoom room, with VDI, with web clients. Zoom account, preferably on a desktop. There's a way to join mobile, but it's not as good for Summit and Conference. You want to be on the desktop. That allows us to actually do a really good job with ticketing authentication, which, especially if you're doing like paid ticketed events, is kind of where it's at. And it's been a struggle with webinars, because webinars works as long as I'm okay selling tickets, but I don't care who uses the tickets. If I'm StubHub and I'm like, cool, I sold the ticket to you, you have your unique attendee link, and then I don't care who clicks the link. One person clicks the link, they get in, I check the box so no one else can get in. Fine, I got paid $100 and one person saw my show. For Zoom events, if you care that Chris bought a ticket and Chris uses it, then Zoom events is kind of where it's at. There are some ways to do it with webinar, with external platforms, with external authentication and SAML, tons of options, but Zoom events is the easy way to do it. So it's kind of this wrapper. It creates your meetings and your webinars. If you guys have had to do events where you're building multiple sessions inside a summit, or God forbid, a conference where it's concurrent events, you know that like managing that across all the different users and concurrency with webinars, and you've got all these like service accounts you're trying to build it off of. Zoomtopia last year, I had to create 20 users to put my webinar licenses on to schedule all my different webinar sessions. And then I have people logging in and out and alt hosting to try to get access to all these different things. Zoom Events takes all of that and makes it just dead simple. because it kind of just, it works how you expect it to. It knows that it's an event platform, which when we were using meetings and webinars, it didn't. We didn't have that. So as the attendee experience, this big new thing is the lobby. So for summits and conferences, I see my ticket at events.zoom.us, click my ticket, click join lobby, and I'm here. Within here, I can do a couple different things. So this top area where you see the big pink picture right now, outside of sessions, it looks like this. During the show, any live sessions that were happening were actually web streaming to this. So you would have one big one streaming with the title of it, the time, and a join button. And you could unmute that and listen to the audio as well. It also had captions on it. And then on the right side, it would do a little vertical film strip of all the other sessions that we're running right now. And you could scroll down to see all of the 13 concurrent sessions as they were going. Click on any of them, they pop up to the front. You can kind of just like browse around and choose where you want to go and then hit join. Down below here, I have these kind of main shortcut links, which are also on the left side here. So I can look at all the different things. So I can go to my sessions, where I can see all the different sessions that we had to offer. There were 123 sessions for Zoomtopia, of which my team provided direct support for 120 of them. They kept adding sessions and we couldn't do the last couple. But each of the sessions, as you create them, can be either meetings or webinars. All of ours for Zoomtopia were webinars. Within there, you are able to provide all these different tags that can go onto them to put them into different tracks and audiences and so that sort of thing. You have your information about your speakers, and they also have bios which are visible on your event page before you get into the lobby. Some information about the session as a whole, and then you also, now that the session is over, it actually can tie the recording link back here as well. So that all lives in one place on the session page. As you can see, with 120 sessions, there's a lot to scroll through. So I would probably want to be either searching for sessions. So if I wanted to look for sessions that were about events, here are the two sessions that had events in their title. Or I could get rid of that. And instead I could come and I could filter. And I don't know, I imagine the text is probably really small for you guys. So I'm just going to keep talking through what I do here. But I can come in here and I can look at the tracks. And I could say, I want to look at the education track. And now I'm just looking at, let me go ahead and spin this back up so I can see that I'm looking at all the different sessions about or in our education track. I can also come to the itinerary page, which I have the same filter options here, and I could filter for different things. And on here, I could do stuff like I could say, I want to look at the developer track. Sorry, I need to apply it. Developer track, apply. And here's all the sessions that were in the developer track across the 2 days. I could take any of them, I can bookmark them, and I can say, I'm going to go to those 3 sessions. And now it's on my itinerary. So I'm able to kind of track throughout my day. The sponsor section is where you're able to see all the different sponsors that we had for the show. There's platinum, gold, and silver tiers that all have different levels of whether they can have a video, how many images they can have. They can do PDF downloads on their page. If you click on any of them, like this one has their video here. They have a couple still images, some information. They, on the day of show, had their own chat panel on the side. That was a dedicated chat channel for this sponsor. And these were the people that were manning that chat channel. And then they had their downloads, that sort of thing. The feature that we didn't tell anybody about until the show itself was the expo hall. And I guess I can't show this because it's ended. But the expo hall is actually a really, really cool feature. It was one I was pushing for pretty hard on the front end. And basically what it ended up doing is, like, think of the floor mat for, I mean, this is at scale, but like I always went back to like Infocom or NAB, which none of us are going to this year. Think of the floor mat for NAB. And you have all the different booths, right? So it's a look of that, and it's got all your sponsors have a booth. What we did for Zoomtopia is we created sponsors for our product lines, for Zoom Rooms, for Zoom Events and Webinar, for Zoom Meeting and Chat, for the developer API apps. We had 6 different Zoom booths. And then you basically get a little avatar. It has you build a little networking profile, your job title, stuff like that. Picture, you can opt in and out of all the different things you want to share or not, and you choose whether or not you want to be available for networking. And then you walk your little avatar around, either clicking around or with the keyboard, and you can walk around people. And as you do, you see all of them walking around. you get a panel that shows everybody who's near you, and you can click on any of them and basically ask them to chat and start creating these one-on-one chats with anybody around you. Or you can go stand in the Zoom Rooms booth and start one-on-one chatting with everybody who wanted to come talk about Zoom Rooms. And then also on that booth, we only used one, but you can do up to 4 meetings, which again are led by those sponsor representatives. Those become alt hosts for these 4 meetings that are live streaming out to your booth with captions and with optional audio, or people can join into them. And so what we did was we had a booth. You came into the Zoom events booth, and there'd be one meeting there where we had breakouts going. You would come in, and we had what we called gatekeepers, which was just someone to come and say, hey, how's it going? I see you're in here. Do you have some questions? What do you want to talk about? You want to talk about events? Let me toss you down into this breakout. I got Nancy down in there. She's going to take care of you. And then they'd answer all of your questions. And it gave you that ability to interact with us directly one-on-one. The expo hall is a really, really cool feature. I'm really excited about it. With that, that's kind of the Zoomtopia experience. That was the end result of what we had. I'm going to take a look at, actually, no, I'm not going to take a look. Kevin, what do I have in the chat that I need to answer?
All right, so we got the first question was, will Zoom events be translated into multiple languages as far as the UI goes?
Eventually. It is only available in English right now.
Okay. The second was, will all the recordings be available on Zoomtopia on Monday or only some?
All should be available on Monday. So every session will be available there. Yep.
And then looks like we just had a couple come in. David Paskin asked, Expo sounds a lot like some of the special meeting options like wonder.me, spatial.chat. Is that what you're going for with Expo?
We're trying to solve the issue of, as I've always put it, like, I didn't go to a conference to go see the sessions. I didn't go to a conference for that. I went to a conference to have the conversation in the hallway. That's why I go. That's what Expo is there to solve. Expo is to solve that networking aspect. That's the reason that we all end up in one city with all the like minds who want to talk about the same things we want to talk about.
I think it has an added edge too. What I felt is any of those rooms that you set up in the expo hall had at least a small cluster of Zoom employees, and it wasn't limited to just salespeople, you know. And I thought that's about impossible to do outside of the Zoom booth in the expo hall, right? And so it was kind of cool that, you know, our connections with, you know, new names and individuals and so forth. Very, very powerful, and kind of not all in one place, but several in multiple places, which was made it really simple and straightforward.
Yep. All right. There is, before I get to David's question, Michelle had asked, hey, we have a conference at the end of October. If we want to use Zoom events for this, how do we get in contact with you? So if you already have an account rep for Zoom, talk to them and tell them, hey, I need event services. If you don't already have an account rep, go contact sales off the website. And then if you're really having trouble with it, ping Jeff, he'll get a hold of me. But ultimately, you're going to go through your sale. It's going to come through the sales org, and they're the ones who are going to put you in contact with us directly. And then I think I saw earlier a question kind of explaining a little more of what event services was. And I think Kevin had answered that in chat. I've told Jeff before, I'm not really here as a sales pitch. That's not my goal for being here. My goal for being here is to make us available to you to answer these questions and stuff. So I'm not trying to turn this into a hard sell. But for conferences, you need the feature. That's how you get it right now. You got to work with us. Cool. And then David, did you have a question, or did that get answered?
No, I just wanted to, so I had asked about the spatial kind of environment. And I guess what I was getting at is there's a democratization of participation in when I get to move my avatar around and I get to choose who I'm listening to or speaking to. Is the expo going to bring in any of that sort of spatial awareness so that audio is automatically turned on when you get close to someone, and then it's turned off when you get far away, videos turned on when you get close, things like that?
I mean, I think I think those type of ideas are all in line with what we're trying to achieve. And that's kind of all the answer I have right now. But just kind of like looking at what we're trying to do, I think stuff like that tends to make sense. Yeah. Cool. So with that, are there any questions before I dive into the back end? Honestly, the back end is going to be kind of utilitarian. It's going to be like, here's where you would click things. And I'm also not going to dig in too terribly deep, because right now there's a good chance that some of the things change before you're the one clicking it instead of me. But I definitely want to make sure we're answering any questions we can. And this doesn't have to be specific to Zoomtopia. So I guess another kind of small bunny trail to go on here is, like I talked about earlier, how Zoom Events is a wrapper, right? I made a joke the other day that it was basically like our new version of MP4. It's like Zoom Events is the wrapper, and then inside of that, I don't know what my codec is. But inside, once you get into the session, that's meetings and webinars. So everything about production. So like on Zoomtopia, we had multiple different levels of production. Our keynotes, the one you saw with Eric, 100% live. All those fireside chats, completely live. Live ASL interpreter, live guest that is remote, live speaker on a stage in front of a green screen coming into Zoom in real time. We also had other sessions that were pre-recorded. We had different levels of production on those sessions. The session, there's nothing specific about Zoom Events. Like ultimately, you're coming in, you're connecting up with a Zoom desktop app, and you're putting some form of video feed in your camera, whether that be a webcam with a piece of glass in front of me, or whether that be a capture card or NDI, and I've got a full-on production strapped to it, maybe with more Zoom components from other meetings. But at the end of the day, that session production, what you're doing with all these different things, doesn't change. I will go ahead and give one call out right now, and that is that Zoom OSC and Zoom ISO can't join Zoom Events at the moment because of version. Now, that may or may not matter a whole ton. It definitely matters. It definitely matters depending on what you're doing with it. But when you think about it, like if I were to create a panel, and I'm doing a panel with these 4 different people, and I'm going to use Zoom ISO to join up to that, my talent meeting, as I call it, to bring those 4 different heads NDI into vMix. And then I'm going to take vMix and put that into my webinar that's on Zoom Events. That's fine, because that Zoom ISO didn't join my Zoom event. It joined another Zoom meeting and was used to build my production for my Zoom event. But if I want to bring in Zoom OSC and do something with my chat and build a chat bot that greets my people as they come in, that's not possible with Zoom Events today, because Zoom Events requires the very, very breakneck latest version of the Zoom desktop client. And we haven't gotten that out to the SDK and out to Liminal yet. Let's see. Ray asked, some of the graphics were from handout decks, not graphics for various Zoom event screens. You provide a template for graphics. Can you expand on that?
Sorry, yes. It just seemed that a lot of the graphics that we were seeing were too small for us to read on the various size formats. And I just, some people did better than others, but some of the graphics were so small, they were very hard to read. I just wonder if from a corporate standpoint, do you put out a template that says, this is what we should be offering?
Yeah, the answer is yes. They gave them, here's the slide deck and the templates that you need to be using. Also, everything did go through legal review, but that's good feedback that I'll take to them. I didn't honestly see any sessions myself throughout the chaos, but I'll definitely take that to them, because that's a constant issue that people are dealing with, is understanding how this is going to translate once you've screen shared it to someone and they've got it in their window. If you're coming from a desktop or something, or how small of text you put on your slides, that's still, that mark gets missed a lot in a lot of places right now. Cool. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. I'm going to show you guys a little bit of the back end, which is the special treat for the day. And then we're going to kick back into Q&A. I've said this before here even, I think, but I definitely thrive off Q&A, whether that be that I do well at it or just that I'm comfortable. I don't know, but I am comfortable with it. So definitely feel free to run at me with questions and take those onto bunny trails. And I can talk about any of these topics for an hour. So we're all good there. Let me go ahead and share this. That's the right one. So I've got a quick conference that I've set up here. All I've done at this point is I had previously went and hit create and did like the first page. But I guess just so you can see that here up in create, I have the conference option. You don't. And that's this event here that I called my Office Test Conference. I'm going to come in and click edit for it. And here you can see the hub that I've put it onto. I've given it a name. I've given it a small description. I could add category tags if I want to. I don't have to for Zoom events. There's no reason to for Zoom events. This is a holdover for on Zoom or from on Zoom, which the Zoom events product spun off of, where there's that public directory. So the ability to have tagging and categories and stuff like that made a lot of sense over there. On Zoom events, you're doing your own link sharing. So without that public directory, it doesn't make any sense to have. You can create either free or paid events. I can't create paid events because I haven't set up billing and payment info on this account. You can take certain countries and block them from your event. This isn't going to step past, like I said, there are only 8 countries on the list right now that can attend paid events. Those are the same 8 countries that can host free and paid events. There's a whole nother list of countries that is able to attend free events, and it's a much longer list. And then there are a short list of countries that cannot do either. Kevin did post that link earlier in the chat. He can post it again if people need it. The big thing for conferences right off the bat is that I set a day and a time, and I can add more days. So I can add up to 5 days. They do not have to be sequential. So I did, that one was on October 31st. I can come in and say that day 2 is on November 3rd. And I can come and say, okay, then we're going to take a break. And my next one's going to be December 1st. And now I'm second guessing myself just a little bit on whether that's going to work or not, but this should work up to 5 days. I choose a time zone for the event. Here is your first real trick of the day for you. Summits and conferences, if you guys have played with this, you've already found this on summits, but you cannot create events for the same day. So today is September 17th, where I'm at. I cannot create an event for September 17th. I have to create it for September 18th or later. There's a trick. Because I can use this time zone, what I can do is I can take a look and say, right now it's 2:35 where I'm at. I can look and say, where is it 11:35 p.m.? I'm going to set it on September 18th to start at midnight in that time zone. And then here in 25 minutes, it'll be the start time of my event. It's not looking 24 hours out. It's looking for the calendar day to be different than the calendar day is where you are right now. So you can cheat that with time zones. I did that a whole lot as I was doing all of my breaking sessions on the product to try to create sessions that were really close to where I'm at for testing purposes. Here you get your event link. This event link doesn't populate until after I've gotten past this, but because I'm editing and coming back, it's got it published here. Save and continue. I can put a cover image for it. I can also add a video if I want to. I can add another 8,000 characters of information about it. And I can add a contact info and a contact email. This doesn't have to be my account one. This is not my account email. Instead, this is the email that's going to get exposed to the guests if they want to ask a question to the host at various times. Definitely, if you're using something like a service account, make sure that you're putting this where you want it to go so that people are actually going to respond to those emails. Here's where I can turn it into a fundraiser. If I was doing that, that is using the integration with Pledge. Someone asked the other day about doing that for like a tip the hat type, like a busking type situation. Can't be used for that. It's only for 501c3. But if you're doing a donation-based system, that's where you would want to do it. From there, we get to the first place that it goes wildly different than anything you've seen before, and that's the agenda. So the agenda for a conference is actually created with a CSV. So right here, I'm able to download the sample CSV. And what I'm going to do for the moment is I'm going to download it and I'm going to upload it right back. And right off the bat, it's going to give me a couple sessions and a couple speakers that it's put in there. And it's also going to have a couple errors. That's because the CSV doesn't include pictures with it, but it requires pictures for sessions and for speakers. You have to have pictures for stuff. So it's going to give me little error messages telling me what's going on there and ask me to come in. Actually, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to do this to bring my images on. I have to have an image for a session. I have to have a little description. Here in that CSV, you can put all your information about the track and the product and the level and the audience. I can choose if I have session chat in the lobby. And that's what I mentioned that for Zoomtopia, you saw lobby chat. You can additionally have a different chat channel for each and every session, which could be really cool, especially if you have different audiences or really specific sessions where you would have a situation where like, I want to go talk to, like, we had some Zoom event sessions for Zoomtopia. I just want to go talk to those people over and over again before and after the event. That session level chat is where I could do that, as opposed to the lobby chat where I'm talking to everybody who wanted Zoomtopia. That's obviously a much different audience. We did not use that for Zoomtopia because moderating that 123 other chat channels is a lot. I've got my time and duration for the session. This was all pulled in by the CSV. And then some other things that you'll notice that you don't have over on Summits is the ability to add polls from here and the ability to add interpreters right from this page. With Summits, those two, with Summits, there is a way to add polls. You need to talk to support to get a feature toggle enabled. There's not a way to do interpreters with Summits today. With that, I'm going to kill some of my other speakers so I don't have to do as many things here. And I'm going to do very quickly do this just so I can get to the next page. So then that was my sessions tab. From here, I'm able to search on this. I'm able to filter on this. And these two things work really, really well. As someone who had to go through 300 to 400 changes on our list for Zoomtopia as we had imported everything, and then they kept changing session IDs and titles and descriptions and times and people and all the things that conferences are terrible about. These tools were incredible for me to be able to navigate around. Over my speakers, I'm going to go ahead and just get rid of most of them. That way I don't have to put pictures on them. And I see that each of these two people has one session. So I'm going to click into this one. Here on the speaker, I'm able to, no, I'm not doing that. I'm doing this. I have to give them a picture. I have to give their name and their email address. This is the first time I'm going to go and talk about the fact that these email addresses, this is where their speaker ticket is going to. That needs to be their Zoom account that they're going to use. There's no way for them to transfer that. You can always come and change this. And so if they come back later and they're like, oh yeah, I told you that email, but this is the one I have for Zoom. You can come back and change that, no problem. It'll just reassign their ticket over. But that email address, unlike panelist links, there's no panelist links in Zoom events. Everything is all about tickets. It's all about ticket gets assigned by the host, or you register for the event. You go to events.zoom.us, you log in, and your ticket is there. There's no panelist links. There's no going back in emails. There's no going and finding something in a calendar invite. You go there, you see your ticket. It's there in real time. You click it. I can add company logo, name, websites. I can put a speaker video, their biography. I can give them social stuff. None of that's required, but lots of things I can do there on their like speaker profile. Let me get this last one and I'll be able to click forward. There we go. So that's the agenda. One of the really cool things is if this is going to be a little hard to demo right now, but if I search for first, since that's their names, apparently, if I search for first here, it'll pop up the two of them. How about, let me do this. Let me search for 6. First 6 pops up. If I look for sessions, I'm going to see the session that first 6 is a speaker for. So this is another great way. Like when I had to go, I found lots of places where like, I need to find all the sessions that David is doing. I can search for David in the sessions and it'll bring me all the sessions David's on. Sponsors is where we add our sponsors. It's a lot the same. You have to have a picture, you have a description. You can add their, like I said, photos, PDFs for download, and videos, one video. And you can choose what tier they're in, platinum, gold, or silver. That's kind of really all that's on there. I'm not going to add one because it's exactly what you expect it to be. This is where I turn the expo on or off, though, and I can choose the expo's hours for each of the days of my conference. So I can choose to only run it one day, or like what we did, we ran it on both days, but we only ran it for a 4-hour window in the middle there to make sure we were able to staff it fully. Go ahead and save past that. This advanced options tab. So one of the things with Zoom events is that we are creating a bunch of meetings and webinars at the end of the day. That's what we're creating in the back end. But we're going to hit, if you remember, like all the specific settings for the sessions, we're going to hit those kind of all at once. So that's going to be this in session section here. So like if I had meeting sessions, the waiting room tag is going to affect those. Q&A affects my webinars. These HD options are the ones that you get within webinars. If you have gotten the 1080p flag enabled by support on your account, which is my little way of plugging, I don't want to see any more webinars in 360. Make them happen in HD, please, for my sake, for your sake. Send a ticket into support. Say I need 720 for my webinars. If you're on a business or higher account, say I need 1080 for my webinars. If you're on a regular pro account, say you need 720. If you have a specific event in mind, say I need 1080 for this one event, tell them the event, tell them the date, they can get it turned on for that one event and then turn it back off after. But you can get to at least 720. You don't need to do the portal tricks. You don't need to do the Zoom room tricks. Just email support, for the love of God. I'm tired of 360 webinars, and I'm sure all of you are too. Kevin has a question or wants to correct me on something.
No, not a correction. Just wanted to find out if you had already addressed what I had just put in the chat, which is I think important for people to realize about speakers filling out their own profiles and uploading their own photos. If you hadn't, you might want to circle back to that because it's a pretty big time saver if you've got a lot of speakers. Yeah.
So there is a method with conferences to take your speakers and invite them to. It basically sends them a link that says, hey, I've given you your speaker ticket, and you can go into events.zoom and you can fill out your speaker profile there, or I can also give you edit access to your sessions. So I can say, cool, this is Kevin's session. Kevin, come fill out your profile for me, and then take your session and fill out the information for it. And then on both of those, he submits the changes and they come back to me as the host to approve them before they go live. We did not actually use that on Zoomtopia because of the scale and the wide breadth of users and speakers we had on the show from all the various companies. But definitely, if you have an event that's happening with a smaller team or a team you really trust, then that absolutely, like Kevin said, can be a big time saver. So this first thing gets a lot of people. And this is the accessibility for the event. So this top one, accessible only to users with event link, sounds really restrictive, but it's not. That means public because there's nothing more public than that on events. With Zoom events, there is no public directory. There is no public search. So the most open I can make this event is accessible with the link. You send that link to whoever you want, and they're able to get in, see it, and log in and register. More restrictive than that is to say it's a private restricted event and is only for people on the guest list. That means I'm going to import a list I'm going to say everybody at my company domain, or I'm going to say this list of users is able to register for the event. One of the things that I've seen get people a lot is all of these events are created inside hubs. Joey was here a couple of weeks ago, and I'm sure that he talked all about hubs and how that works. But ultimately the hub is like a page for your events. And the way I think you should be using it is that you have a hub for each of your audiences. So if I want to have internal events, I would create an internal hub and I would put all my internal events inside that hub. And the thing is, if I create an internal hub, I would want that to be only accessible to my company domain. And if I make a hub that's accessible to my company domain and then I make an event in it, this option will be grayed out, because you can't make a public accessible event inside a private accessible hub. My event can't be a wider audience than my hub was. So just make sure if you have that issue at some point, you need to make sure that you're using a public accessible hub, and then you can create public events from within that. You can only restrict down tighter. You can't widen it back up. The conference lobby, this is where I can choose whether the chat is turned on or off. So this tag right now is off for Zoomtopia. And this is where you would actually toggle it on and off like we did if you want to turn it off overnight. We got a question from, I can't get the name to pop up. Go ahead.
It's Robert. Just to go back on what you said now, if we're creating a private hub, did I understand you correctly that it's per domain? So if I'm servicing several domains, I'd have to have several private hubs?
So there's two different ways to limit a hub and or event. And those ways, actually there's three ways to limit a hub. A hub you can limit to my account, or you can limit to a domain, and you can actually add multiple domains. But you can say like this list of domains, and you can say this list of users. And you can do that at the hub or the event level. It really depends on what you're doing. I've seen a couple different use cases for that. One would be like, I want to create, like later we'll actually get into, I want to create a ticket category for my partner event. I want to say my partner is DVE Store. Anybody with an account at DVE Store gets free tickets, but everybody else has to pay $10. Or I could say anybody who has a Gmail address I'll let you register for my event, but I don't want any of those Yahoos. That worked really well. But yeah, so that's how that works.
Thank you.
So the conference lobby, that's where you turn the chat channels on and off. And this is where you can choose when you want to open and close the lobby. This can be changed after the fact and can even be changed in post. So I can come in, like at one point on an event, I had to come in and change the lobby open date, and I changed it to a week ago. So it just like, bam, it's open. So you can change that after the fact if you kind of want to use that to manually open your lobby when you want. We had a case where we wanted to do that, where it was like, we don't want our lobby to go live until all the sessions and data and stuff is ready to go. So I didn't want to set a date and kind of commit to it. So instead we told it to open way close to the event. And then when it was time, I just came in and bumped it out so that it was now open kind of on a switch. We talked about in-session settings there. Event security chooses whether they can rename themselves or share screen. These settings, as you know, are controls that are available within the session. So once you get in the session, you can also adjust them there, but this is going to be the default that it starts at. Cloud recordings. So this is going to choose whether you do record, whether that recording happens automatically, whether that recording is automatically shared access to them, whether you live stream in the lobby, and whether you want to send out an email that says, hey, all the recordings for the event are available. This setting is really important to pay attention to before you publish, because if I am saying that I'm not going to record, once I sell a ticket, I can't change that because someone's already bought a ticket. I can't bait and switch them. So you need to make sure that this is set the way you want. And that's kind of true of a lot of things. You want to make sure that you're getting things in place before you publish, particularly anything that could be kind of conceptually a bait and switch on the ticket purchaser. So things like deleting a session, things like changing the event time. Those are things that can't change after the event is published. And then you can create a survey. So you can actually create a survey for the entire event, or you can create a survey for individual sessions. You could have one, like for Zoomtopia, we had a survey that was used across all sessions. I could have actually created 3 different versions of the survey that were used on different types of sessions. You can assign those at a session level. Those pop up when someone leaves the meeting. They get a pop-up in the lobby that says, hey, here's the event survey. Would you like to take it? And it's actually a really smart feature in that it'll start stacking them up. And after like the second time you clear it, if you close it out and you're not doing the surveys, it'll actually ask you, hey, do you just want me to hide the surveys? And then it'll hide them, stop bugging you after every session, and then give you a way to come get back to it later if you want to like, hey, let me get through my day and then I'll come back and think about all the surveys. So actually the surveying feature is really, really well thought out. The tickets page is where it's going to show me my speakers, my panelists, my alt hosts, my interpreters, and my sponsor tickets, my 5 ticket types. On Summits, you actually add all of those tickets yourself, because on Summits, it's ticketed at the event level. So if I create an alt host for a summit, they have alt host access to every single session. If I create a panelist, they have panelist access to every single session. Here with conferences, the sessions themselves are adding who has what access, and then that gets populated here. One big caveat at the moment is that you can only hold a single type of ticket for a conference. So if I've been given a panelist ticket, I can be a panelist on whatever sessions within that conference you want me to be a panelist on. I will get attendee access to any sessions that I'm not a panelist on, but you can't make me a panelist for one session and an alt host for another. You have to pick one thing that I'm going to be to this show, and then I'm either that or I'm an attendee. There are a couple of ways that you can work around that to make it bend to your will, but that's one big thing you need to keep in mind. And then here's where you would actually add the attendee tickets. So here I'm creating a ticket type. I'm going to call this general. I'm going to say I want to make 100 of them. I'm going to go ahead and explain something real quick that's getting a lot of questions. The way Zoom Events licensing works. If I take a pro account, so a pro account can host meetings for 100, right? And then I add a Zoom Events 500 add-on to it. I can create a single session event or a summit. I can also create a webinar, because the Zoom Events license includes webinar. So I can create a webinar for 500 people plus 100 panelists, because it uses my webinar capacity for the webinar side of things, and it uses my meeting capacity for the panelist side. With Zoom Events, it's just using the one main capacity. It's not adding the meeting to it. So I have a Zoom Events capacity of 500. So I can create 500 tickets, -1 because it's me. Or actually, in this case, minus however many panelists and sponsors and speakers I have above, because it knows, hey, I have all those tickets out there. So I have like 490 left. A big caveat to that is if I put a meeting type session in my show, it's going to restrict the capacity to my meeting capacity, which for a pro license is 100. Zoom Events does not grant a large meeting 500 add-on. So if you need to have a summit with 500 people in it that has both meetings and webinars, you would need a Zoom Events 500 add-on, and you would need a large meeting 500 add-on. That's a big one that's been I'm getting a lot of questions from sales reps on that right now. So for this, I'm going to create 100 tickets. I'm going to give them access to all tracks, which this is where I could start creating ticket types that can access only certain tracks. So I could create a ticket type that is full access, and I could create a ticket type that's like keynotes only, that is cheaper or something like that. Go ahead, Robert.
Yeah, can we just go back to tickets, because you explained the pro, but if I have a business license, and say I've got 25 business licenses bought and 2 or 3 webinar licenses with large capacity, how does that apply to the events? What can I set up?
Yeah, so if you have a business license, I'm trying not to get this answer wrong. Business license has a default capacity of
300.
It's 300. Okay, I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3. So a business license has a default capacity of 300. So that's your meeting capacity. So if I took a user on that business account, they have a business license, and I give them a Zoom Events 500 add-on, then I put a meeting type session in my summit, or I create a single Zoom event that is a meeting type. I could create a total of 300 tickets, of which one is going to be mine. All the speakers are going to subtract from it. My panelists, my alt hosts, those will all come out of it. And then whatever I have left is how many tickets I can make available to the public. If you have on that account, you could also have a large meeting 500 or a large meeting 1,000 add-on. If you put that on the user, it would be looking at that to create that minimum of how many it can fit in there. Does that make sense?
Okay, so even with a business account, we're actually looking at the user who has the license allocated to him.
Yep. Yeah.
So if I'm the admin and I have access to all of them, that makes no difference. I have to be a user.
Right. And an admin is a user. So, but the Zoom events license is an add-on. It's like a webinar or a large meeting add-on. It's going on a user, and that's who can host these events. Candidly, from my team's perspective, especially when we get into conferences, we see a lot of benefit in doing it as, like, with a service account type approach. So the account that hosted Zoomtopia was not my account. It was a service account that I have login info for. That way I can also have 3 other people on my team who have login info for it. And we're all sharing the workload of using it, moderating it, making changes with it. Yeah.
So
Jeff,
Sam,
yeah.
Sam, can I just finish off on that? But are you saying that the license capacity applies to the number of tickets and has nothing to do with the session capacities or the number of sessions that we're running?
Another way of thinking of it is with Zoom events, with webinar versus meeting, you always have these like 2 capacities. With Zoom events, the Zoom events capacity is ultimately a webinar capacity. And then your meeting capacity also matters if you have a meeting type session. If you only have webinar sessions, then it's just going to be the Zoom events capacity. Easy. If you have a meeting type session within your Zoom event, then it's going to limit the tickets down to whichever is lower. Your meeting capacity with whatever large meeting add-ons you may or may not have, and then your Zoom events capacity.
Okay, just taking that one step further. If I have a 1,000 webinar capacity, I've sold the 950 tickets. Does that mean I can have one session running with a maximum of 950 or multiple sessions for all of those people who have tickets?
So that number matters for the number of tickets you can sell, the number of people who can register. As far as sessions, summits you can't schedule concurrent sessions with a summit. With conferences, you can schedule up to 13 concurrent sessions. And those 950 people, 1,000 total with all your panelists and stuff, can split up however they want within those 13 sessions.
I finally understood that. Thank you.
Now, I'm going to point out one more thing before I get to Jeff, and that's summits. You cannot schedule concurrent sessions with summit. So if I have a session from 9 to 10 a.m., my next session can't start till 10. But if I've given someone alt host for summits, my whole summit. So I give someone alt host for my summit. They can get in there with the speakers in practice mode before 10. It's not like with a webinar license where if someone else tries to start up the next webinar, it would like kill my current one. That won't happen with summits. My current one will run. If I go 10 minutes over, fine. The one that's supposed to start at 10, they start in practice session 30 minutes early, fine, no problems. But as far as scheduling, I can't overlap them. Jeff, go ahead.
So on what you just said, will they be able to start that 10 o'clock session on time, get out of practice session into live, even though you've gone overtime in the previous session? So they are technically running at the same time?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. The system stops looking at concurrency. Instead, it's just the scheduling side of the world that's just looking at it.
Okay.
So yeah, your sessions
and that's
are able
webinar only. I mean, if you had a webinar up against a meeting, I'm assuming you don't have a way to start a meeting early in a practice mode, if you will.
Yeah, not a practice mode, but you could still start it early. So any of the sessions, anyone who has alt host capabilities to that session, through however they got it, depending on which type of event we're talking about, the alt host can always start it early. And in summits or conferences where we have a lobby, once attendees are allowed to join it, the join button shows up. I don't care what time it is. I don't care what time it was scheduled for. The join button shows up. And that join button stays until the session ends. I don't care when it was supposed to end. I don't care what it was scheduled for. Now, Once we hit the scheduled end time, nobody can start it again. But if I stay in it, I can keep it open until that session expires at 30 hours if I wanted to. But that join button or that start button goes away at that point.
So does an alt host hold the privilege, all the privileges of an account owning, meeting scheduling host, those few functions that are required by that person to start a live stream? Only they can do that. To create a poll, that initial creation of poll questions has to be that account owner in the same domain. Is that the alt host?
So there were a couple different pieces of that question, and they have a couple different answers. The end result is once you get into a session, it's like you know and love today. Co-host, the ability to hand host role to anybody I want, the ability to take an attendee, promote them up to a panelist, and then give them the host and tell them, peace, I'm out. Totally there. You can do whatever you want within the session once you're there. The only thing that changes is that join process. Now,
but that passive host, if I were to pass a host in the world we live in right now, if I were to pass a host to, let's say, Frank, and he's not a member of my domain, but I've given him host, he still won't be able to start a live stream because he's outside my domain. Yes, he's on a paid account, but he's not in he's not the original scheduler or within my domain. And so there's those few features that require that one specific individual that's within the domain. So I'm just trying to gain clarity on who has that, who do we need to make sure? Because that's, when I get hired as a freelancer, for instance, to go in and moderate a meeting, that I have nothing to do with a conference other than maybe these two particular sessions I'm technically moderating as all. Who do I need to become if they're on their side, they are, managing the setup of the conference itself or event?
So here's some of the coolest things about it. So those don't change. Like polls is set up by the scheduling host. Poll is a scheduling feature. Zoom Events does not have a way right now for co-editing. So it's one person, one login. And again, my team uses service accounts to defeat this because it's one login is the one that creates and edits this event, right? They're the one that can set up polls. Live streaming, you can't live stream out of Zoom Events right now. You can only live stream to the lobby. That is probably behind feature toggles. So let's talk more about that as it becomes important to people, or as you start getting there. But the idea with Zoom Events is that you're ticketing your event here and you're doing your thing here. But that kind of like half answers that question. The other half of that question is that when that button, because I don't think the streaming button is there right now. When the streaming button is there, if that were to be the case in the future, when you click it, I expect it to have the same behavior that you're seeing at a standard meeting or webinar today, that the stream has to be started by someone in your domain. Now, the coolest thing, one of the coolest things for you guys about Zoom Events is alt hosts don't have to be on your domain at all. So you can now alt host whoever you want as long as they have a license. Now they do have to have a license. They don't have to have a Zoom Events license. They just have any form of licensed user, but you can alt host anybody across domains, which was absolutely an insanely powerful feature for us for Zoomtopia, because we built all this on a service account. We built it on an account that my team owns that's completely outside of Zoom's tenant. And then we alt hosted a bunch of people from Zoom over on their thing. And they didn't have to sign out of their main account and sign into a fake account for the day. They were able to have all of their Zoom chat and stuff that we as Zoomies live in without having any issues there. So that alt hosting is like way beyond what you're used to today, where you can only alt host within your account.
So let me set up this scenario as kind of an example. It'll sound a little facetious at the beginning, but if I were to announce, in this meeting, hey everybody, if you need my services, I have cameras, I have microphones, I have expertise, and in fact, I can even provide you the Zoom platform in 1080. Now, that last statement seems to cause some ruckus in the industry against the licensing agreement, right? Who is the intended Zoom Events license owner? Because it certainly appears that we could make the investment as providers of this, technology and services, that we could be the intended owner of an events platform and parse it out to customers for their multi-session events. That only happened once a year. And so their willingness to make the investment in Zoom Events and learn it and manage it would be an insane ask of them versus our professional services and experience and familiarity that we're growing into right now of that platform, which is part of what they'd be buying into. So how does that align or misalign with what Zoom is thinking? Who's the intended buyer of these owner of these licenses of Zoom Events?
So for the most part, I'm not touching that question with a 10-foot pole. The answer I'm giving you is that everything I've seen from the marketing aspect is that these licenses are being marketed to the businesses themselves. And you'll have to read the license terms and interpret them as you will.
Yeah. All right. I just wanted I wanted an official, unofficial answer.
That's as unofficial as it gets.
Right.
I ain't touching licensing agreements, but the reality is, from a technical perspective, alt hosts, you can alt host off of the account, so that plays into that a lot. Let's go ahead and get the question from Michelle.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to quickly understand the join button that will be available. So if you are using a meeting, as soon as you start the meeting, will the join button then be available for attendees to start joining, even if that's your 30-minute pre-run? Or how exactly does that work?
So this is going to be different for single events versus summits and conferences. For single events, I think you've seen how it behaves today, which is mostly around the scheduled times. And it gives you the option of like the 30 minutes before that you mentioned there to let them get to that join button early. For summits and conferences, within that lobby, the join button is completely driven by the active meeting status, not by times at all. So like this event, that event that I'm setting up right now is scheduled for October 31st. I could go into it, open the lobby right now, click start, and then anyone who is in there as an attendee would see a join button.
Thank you.
Yep. And then Marty has a question.
Yeah, hi. I just want to get some clarification about the alt hosts and who can start a meeting.
Okay.
Did I hear that all hosts can now start a meeting? And you were saying that alt hosts do not have to be within your domain.
Right. So so alt hosts can start a meeting. That's been a thing. That's the alt host role. Now, alt host does not move licensing around. So like if you schedule a meeting and then you alt hosted me and I start it, or so you schedule a meeting, you alt host me, I start it, your license is still being used to run that meeting, which plays into concurrency. And with webinars in particular, you can't just take one user with a webinar license, schedule 10 webinars for the same time, give them out to 10 people with alt hosts and have them all start them. That won't work. But with Zoom Events, that's the end of that thought. The second thought is with Zoom Events, yes, you can alt host off of your tenant onto a completely separate Zoom account. So you could give me, my success account, a alt host for your next session. And then at that point, I would be able to go in and start it, and it would use your license to run, but I could start it.
And that's different from, say, the traditional meeting, which you can't do that in a meeting.
Correct. For meetings and webinars, alt hosts have to be licensed and they have to be on your same account. So you can only alt host your coworkers. I can't alt host an outside one, which is probably, you guys have probably run into a lot as virtual producers, because they're like, they're scheduling the webinar and you're sitting there tapping your fingers, waiting for their host to start up the session so you can get in and they can give you co-host. Now, it's important to distinguish. Co-host is the in-session role. Alt host has the ability to start a session, and then whoever starts the session first becomes the host, and then everyone else who had alt host would automatically get assigned co-host when they start in. But co-host can be given to anyone at any time in any session for any reason.
Yeah, because an example of where that's a problem is that I run a weekly show, right? And I have a set of panelists, and we do it in a meeting.
Yep.
If I can't make that show,
Mhm.
the show don't go.
Right.
I can't enable one of my panelists to run the show, to start and run the show.
Right, because they're all outside your account, right? They're all like, each of you has your own, or you have a pro account, and then each of them has a free license for their own pro or whatever. So yeah, you don't have a way to alt host them right now. Zoom events would give you a way to alt host them.
Now, you mentioned that you can do that provided they have a paid account.
They have to have a paid account for that. Yeah.
Do they have to have the same level of paid account?
No, they just have to be
No.
licensed at all. So
Okay.
you have a Zoom events license, you're paying the, what is it, $99 for a Zoom events license. They just have a pro account. They got a $20 a month account. That's fine. They just have to be licensed.
Okay, thanks.
Cool. Jeff?
I was going to add, Kevin had responded to when we were talking about, the join button when it shows up, and it doesn't. His point here and his response was the join button won't show up until you exit practice session and start your webinar, right? But I'm assuming the join button pops right up if it's a meeting versus a webinar. But my added point to that is that wouldn't stop me from saying, hey, I want to start this meeting 10, 15 minutes early, but I can still keep the waiting room on. Yeah, right. So they may see a join button, they may get into it, but they're still going to get stopped at a waiting room inside that meeting. Wouldn't that be correct?
For meetings, yeah. So basically that's establishing whether or not the session is running, establishes that. If you're talking about webinar where there's a practice mode, they don't see the join button until you hit start webinar.
Yeah.
But all of these things, Zoom events is really controlling, like the way it's controlling those join buttons is it's controlling when you can try to join, but it doesn't at all change the experience you get when you join, if that makes sense. So when you join, we then take a look at what is the session doing right now. It's a meeting and it has a waiting room. It's a webinar and it's in practice mode, whatever it may be. That experience doesn't change.
Yeah, and I guess and I could look forward to that actually. Hey, the join button shows up, it's a meeting, they click on join, they've put it on halt right now, which is the enhanced waiting room with video. They won't give it to us right now, I'm assuming because they're enhancing it. But if they hit join, then I could fully anticipate them hitting that enhanced waiting room, which is coming again, where then they get a previewed video, right? And then 5-10 minutes later, we open up the waiting room, and now they're in the meeting. So I like the workflow promise there.
Yep. Jonas, what you got?
So talking about the alt hosts, how I handle it right now, because obviously I can't give alt host to all my producers if they are on like different accounts, is I just give them the join link. Is that also possible with Zoom events? The start link.
So with Zoom events, everything about your identity is more locked down. So with Zoom events, what do you mean the start link?
So Zoom has a link to start a meeting that gives you a host as soon as you start it, and you don't need to be the exact user that has created a meeting.
So you're talking like a link that has like the claim code or whatever it's called in it.
No, it's /s, and then it has the meeting ID, password, and your SAC.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. So that's not going to exist on events.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's see. Which one am I taking live now, Kevin? Oh, the 7-day trial. Trial should be 30 days. So I don't know who gave you a 7-day trial. but they should give you a 30-day trial. Go ahead, Robert.
I've been given a 14-day trial.
I mean, ultimately, I guess that's up to your sales rep, but I would be responding and saying, hey, I need a little longer. Give me 30.
That's exactly my thinking. Thank you.
Ultimately, they can go in and they can edit the end dates. So getting a 30-day trial, if that's what you need to go through, it's a bigger workflow. It's a bigger product. It takes a little bit of time. I think that's a fair ask. And then it's important to circle back to, that's going to get you access to events and to summits. You're not going to have access to create and try conferences at that point. Summits can only be a single day, single calendar day, 24 hours. They can't have sessions scheduled to overlap at all. They don't have sponsors. They don't have the expo. And everyone gets ticketed at an event level, not at a session level. That's the high level differences between them.
So Sam, are you going to go back and finish off on the setting up the summit?
Yeah, I guess so. There's not much left, but let me do it. So let's come back in here. And this is a conference that I'm setting up. But so we got to the ticket page. So I had named my ticket. We got spun off on all the different things to go into the capacity of this. I can choose when to start selling tickets and when to end, and I can customize those dates. So I could do like an early bird ticket type that's only available for the first month, and then after that you have to pay full price or that sort of thing. And then a description for that. I can also take that ticket and I can restrict it. So I can restrict it either to a guest list, which is I can import it or type it list of emails. I can go to specified domains. So, at companyname.com, and I can have multiple, or I can do users in my account. I'm not going to restrict it. I'm going to hit save. And now that ticket type is there. And then I can add another ticket type. And I can just keep going with that to create the different tickets. So if I wanted to have, again, like there's all sorts of things, like I can have early bird specials. I could have tickets for my sponsors that are free. And I could choose that I want to give my sponsor only 10 tickets to be free. It's the first 10 people that register with your domain get in. I could have a number of tickets that are just free in general. I could have tickets that are just to the keynotes and free, but maybe the main track is not, or maybe this one has workshops or whatever. That all plays into conferences. The stuff about like having tracks and stuff is all a concept of conferences. So summits, I believe, can have multiple ticket types. Kevin might have to confirm me on that. But they have a couple different, like less use cases for them than conferences has with the additional stuff. And from there, that is the end of it. At this point, I can either save it or I can hit publish. Again,
how locked in are you?
Yeah. So if I hit save, nothing. If I hit publish, then again, it's the stuff that, like, conceptually, if you think of it as bait and switch stuff. So I can't change, once I hit publish, I can't change my dates. I can't change my times for my show. I believe I can't delete sessions. I can definitely add sessions. I can definitely change sessions. I can remove speakers. I can add speakers. I can do anything I want with sponsors. My recording settings and my streaming settings are locked. Because they have to do with, like, when someone bought a ticket, they agreed to certain things to happen. And so I can't change that. I can turn chat on and off. I can turn the expo on and off. I think that's a somewhat inclusive list.
What if you created a ticket type that just didn't produce? You thought you could sell 100 of them, 50 VIP backstage passes for $500 a piece, and it just didn't work out. You only had 3 people end up buying them.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's more along the lock-in, but is there a refund capability to simply refund those 3 tickets so that you can kind of kill the 50 that you allocated originally and stop selling them?
Yeah. So from the manage portion, actually, I won't have anything to manage here. All right, I got to publish it so I can do this. So I'm going to go to my drafts. I'm going to come there. I'm not gonna click that. I'm gonna click edit, and I'm going to come all the way to my last page, and I'm gonna go and hit publish. That is going to my hub, so it's going to confirm a couple things. It's going to tell me that these things are what can't be changed, which includes the ticket details. So ticket details cannot change after publishing, even if you did refund the 3 tickets, it seems like. Cool. So it's working on that. I'm going to go ahead and come over to my host dashboard. It'll take a couple minutes to show up here, it says. But from there, I'll show you the management page where you can see all the people that have bought your tickets. It gives you a bunch of stats on them. You can see them, and then you can go in and you can cancel orders, which is like for right now, if I had someone who registered as an attendee, but I needed them to be a panelist or I added them as a speaker later, I would go in and cancel their attendee ticket and then add them as a speaker. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, so along these lines, you did just say that you can change a session. So say you needed to move a session to a different time, that's possible, as long as you're not getting rid of it. Is that? So say like your speaker who's supposed to present at 2:00 had a delayed flight and needs to move to 3:00 or whatever it is. Is that something that's possible? Or
with conferences, I know I could change the time. I'm not completely positive on summits. I think on summits I couldn't.
Okay.
At the moment.
And can you say someone totally scraps? They can't go. Did you say you can't delete sessions?
With summits, I don't think you can delete sessions. With conferences, I believe you can. And that's something I think you're going to see. These are changes that we pushed in for Zoomtopia that we went back and said, hey, these things are locked and can't be. So conferences are a bit more flexible at the moment. And I think we're going to see those changes coming to summits, I expect. But at the moment, I believe summits, your agenda is only additive.
Copy that. And then the other issue about, you mentioned recording is one of those things you have to make sure you do before you publish. Right. I know I've done tons of events where the whole conference was supposed to be recorded, and then a presenter says, hey, we're releasing information that can't be recorded.
Sure.
Are you able on the fly to be able to change that, or to start a recording if someone previously said, oh, we don't want this session recorded, hey, now all of a sudden they're going live, oh, we'd love to have this, is that an on the fly kind of thing, or are we locked out?
So the recording settings are at an event level. So when they come to you and they're like, hey, we only want to record this session, or they say, hey, we want to not record this session, can't record this session, but record all the others, you have to make a decision and make that setting at an account level before you publish. So the better option for me would be just you always record. Now, once you get into the session, if you have opted not to record, the record button does not exist. If you've opted not to record, you have no record button there. You can't spring that on your ticket buyers if they didn't agree to it during the registration process, because there's a specific pop-up that they see that says, you're buying a ticket for this, it's going to be recorded. You're good. But you've told them you're going to record. You've told the options to record. You always have a stop button.
Okay.
So you can definitely, in the case of like, hey, we decide we have sensitive info or this session can't be recorded for reasons, you can definitely 100% come in and just stop that recording.
So if they agreed during the registration process to recording, can I assume that the ever so friendly audible alert that we're recording in the meeting goes away because they previously agreed to it?
I'm trying to remember what happened on Zoomtopia Day. I know I got my panelists join pop-up. I don't think there is no, there totally is. There totally is. The audible is there. It is, it was, it is. That doesn't go anywhere. Ed?
So before we move on, just lastly, if you do stop that recording, because you said you could stop it, are you able to restart it?
Yes.
Like, so say there's a small segment you don't want to record, you can start and stop the way you would in a normal.
Yep. Yeah, as long as it's been enabled before you published, then it's just Zoom as normal.
Okay. So it sounds like it makes sense no matter what you want to do is to enable that before you publish either way, so you don't lose the option.
I personally would.
Copy that. Thank you.
All right, Robert.
One of the things that we do when we're defining conferences is to save them and then save them as a template, so we can actually test them and then use the template to define the proper event.
Yep.
Now over here we just had two options, to save and to publish. Is there a template of what we've defined available so that we can reuse it?
Yes and no. So for summits right now and for events, you have a duplicate option. So you have a duplicate, which would basically take a already published event and pull it into the final stage of editing as a new event that you could then do stuff with. Conferences doesn't have duplicate today. It will by the time you guys have access to it. Because that was some very big feedback from us. So that'll definitely be there. But yeah, so you have that. You don't have like templates necessarily, but you can also go into your past events. You can say, I did this event 3 months ago, take that, duplicate it, edit my things, and then move on.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yep. Michelle? You are muted at the moment.
Sorry, rookie mistake there. I was just on Jeff's question about the recording. So I know on your audio settings on your account, you can actually switch it off that there's no audible voice playing. So if that setting is switched off on your account, will it then still have the audible voice saying that the meeting is recorded?
Honestly, you need to just test it. I don't have a truthful answer. Most things will carry. So for the most part, account level settings are carrying down into Zoom events, but there every now and then are things that surprise me that Zoom events has been told to override for some reason or other. Like Zoom overrides the account level recording and the user level recording settings. So I don't know where that one's going to end up because it is such a data privacy issue.
Yeah.
Those tend to be the ones that do override, if any do.
Great, thank you.
Cool. Was it Tom?
So you're saying that if I wanted to in a summit or in a conference, if I would not be able to give permission to record locally to someone, or would I be able to?
If you have recording opted on everywhere, I don't remember if you have this option right off the bat, because like I just kind of alluded to, I slipped it in there real quiet, but it overrides your user level recording settings, and your user recording settings are where, or your account settings are where you give that ability for hosts to give out local recording options or have local recording options. So by default, Zoom events overrides that. The trick to that is if you create a group and put your person in there, group management overrides Zoom events. So if you create a group and you say, this is my Zoom event recording settings, and you put your one Zoom events person in there and you set the recording settings there, you are able to do it. And that does include the ability to give local recording access and do local recordings. Now, again, all recording access will be shut off if you didn't opt for recording when you published. But as long as recording is turned on at the published state, then yes, there is a workaround to get local recording there. Jeff.
When you first started building a conference, you imported a CSV. How is that CSV generated? You guys, is there an application? Is that a temporary process and that's going to improve? How is that actually generated? Because then the next question is if we're going to hand type it in a spreadsheet, then what format, and where's that and all that, right? I mean, it's not released yet anyway, so
right.
Kind of an early question.
I don't, and this is where I don't have a true answer, but I don't see the CSV going anywhere, because in its simplest form, you just do what I did, where you download the sample CSV, import it right back up, and then you just delete everything it put in there, the handful of speakers and sessions, and you could just start from there and start adding your sessions one at a time and adding your speakers one at a time. But that's a really long process to do, like through the wizard. If you only have a couple sessions, who cares? If you have 123 sessions, my God. So in that case, the CSV is absolutely what you want. And then basically, Kevin's about to have to do this with a bunch of different customers, where we're basically going, cool, here's the CSV. This is the data I need from you to build your show. I need the title of every session and when time it is and description and who's talking at it and that sort of thing. So that's kind of where you're filling it out. For Zoomtopia, they built the show in Cvent. So that's what the event organizer planners were using. They were using Cvent as their database as they gathered information from everyone. And then they handed me, hey, here's the export of Cvent. And I took that and manipulated it to put all of its columns into the right columns of my CSV and then hit import.
Did I hear you right earlier in saying there's only one person who can build the entire conference, who has the rights to build that, manage it, and so forth?
Currently. So currently, yes, a Zoom Events host has the license and they do everything on their own host. That's definitely roadmapped to add co-editing access.
Yeah, okay.
And along with that co-editing access, they're going to have my suggestion from my team of all the different ways you guys are going to use it, where you're going to have editors who I need this person to have editing access to the sponsors only, and I need this person to have access to my sessions, and this person to have access to what there already is of this speaker to have access to edit their sessions only. So that'll eventually be pretty full-fledged.
Yeah, I can see that. I still, I know you're not going to have an answer, but I have to share because I know, if there's anybody here who can, take thoughts back, is you and Kevin. I still have such a challenge imagining, a large conference or a large company and saying you have to buy into this. And when you buy into it, you're the editor, right? And the owner of this platform. And the learning curve that comes with that is
absolutely
it's an extinguishable, suggestion that says you're out of your mind.
Absolutely not. That should never happen. What should happen that I don't think steps on the license agreement is, and again, I am not your lawyer, all that good stuff. But what me and my team would do is exactly what we did on this show. We spun up a new Zoom account, put the Zoom Events license on it. And this isn't my Zoom account. This is the company who's hosting the event. IT spins up a sub account or gives me a separate account that they're willing to give me the password for. And now, yes, it is one user, it is one password, and it is shared between their event host and me as the person actually doing the build out and my two people who are helping me do the build out. And you're doing it at a service account sort of model. That for the conference world, because you're 100% right. I'm never going to be okay, cool, I'll be your Zoom person, but screen share and let's walk you through everything. That's not what we're doing. You guys are going to be the ones building out these shows. You are going to be directly logging in with these Zoom Events licenses and creating these events, hitting these settings, taking that data from them, and then turning it into the change list. So service accounts is the route to it right now.
So you're speaking to, let's say, I get that client that says, we want to have you help us launch a conference. We're sold on Zoom Events. I say you have to get that licensed, but I'm going to give them, let's say, my company domain is streamsharks.com. So I say, company A at streamsharks.com. So I create an alias to my email, which they add as a sub account to their existing Zoom. Okay.
Yeah. So now they've bought the license. So we have no weirdness with reselling of license services and how that will play into the TOU. And it said they have an account, they have a license, and it's an account that is not on their main tenant, or they're otherwise, it's not behind their SSO. It's not Cindy's account that they're having to give you Cindy's password, right? It's no person's account, it's a service account. And they're able to give you that password, and they're able to have that password, and a couple other people that need to on your team are able to have that password. And that's the way to manage this for the moment.
So, and Zoom Events will sell to any account.
Correct.
I mean, there's no limitation on what kind of an account you have to be a purchaser of Zoom events.
Correct. Now, the only thing that would come in there is that 1080 thing, because if you're not on a business account, if you're spinning up like one pro account to put this onto, that's why the alt hosts across tenants is so important, is because of the service account structure. But the 1080 thing would come up, and then you would contact into support and you say, hey, we've got a big event happening. It's on this one. We're using a Zoom Events 10K license, and the show dates are October 14th and 15th. We need 1080 for webinar for those 2 days. And then they should approve that. And then they're going to go in on the 16th and turn it off.
So I guess what I would look for from Zoom is to one day officially release a statement that says we will not plan on providing to you producers out there to become service providers of our platform, right? Like meaning you can carry the license, you can make the investment for a 50,000 attendee platform, own it, and then use it for your customer base, or they go down that path and they allow service providers to legally be able to be created and exist without fear. And on the flip side, when you think about Zoom licenses, be them pro accounts, free accounts, business, enterprise, the utilization number of an individual account across the millions around the world has got to be incredibly low, which is good for business. I get it. But at the same time, as a business, right, a lot of us are in the business of providership, these types of productions and so forth. It would make it helps justify, so really what you're asking us, Zoom is asking us to do, is not spend any money with Zoom and simply provide a sub account creation into each of the customers that need to spend the money for possibly a once a year event. And so I'm sharing out loud, not trying to be a negative nanny, but still trying to process, whether it really makes sense or if it was intentional or not. But it does put us in a little bit of a pickle in a sense, because as producers, we say, well, you've got to do, they want to buy into our services, and then we're laying some workload back on them, like their exchange manager, their Zoom account manager. Like, you're going to have to go do this, and then you're going to have to go do this, and then you're going to have to go make a purchase, and then the request to get high resolution and so forth will be a very repetitive task, and it's not a terribly attractive platform to imagine ourselves being on, helping represent this platform and its growth and so forth. So I just have to be really frank about it and see if we can over time gain some further clarity and direction on that.
Yep. And that's not going to be an answer that I'm going to have.
Oh, I'm not expecting one, truly.
Cool. Let's see. So it did finish populating. Let me bring that back up. So here, you can see that I have the ability to join the lobby for that conference because I told it I wanted it to be open already. I can see that my tickets are on sale. I can see that my ticket sales are absolutely abhorrent at the moment. And then here, I have the ability to go edit, or I can view event summary is really where it's at for this. And that's where I'm going to see the different information of tickets I've sold, how many I have left. And here below, it would show all the different orders. And that's where it would give me the button to cancel an order if someone had purchased a ticket there. I can also export that data to filter out if I need other ways of searching and whatnot. The last thing that might be interesting, the analytics and control page is where if people report incidents in the lobby, So if a user, does a report, they report either a specific chat message saying, hey, this guy's being a jerk, or this is spam, or whatever it is, or they could report a whole page. That comes here, and this is where you manage that and action those, whether you're removing messages or kicking the person out or whatnot. And then the control page is what's controlling that masthead to say, should it have the currently live sessions? Should it have just a picture and a video? Or should it have specific sessions? If I wanted to say, like, look, at this time, all these different sessions are going to be going, but I want to change it so it's only going to feature this one up at the top, no matter what. And you can do that again in real time during the show. And that's kind of it for the back end.
Do you have any sense that will there possibly be like chat channels? So if they have a support issue, they can just get on chat with a support tech versus a sales question, or whatnot. Any chat channels, chatter out there?
So there's not anything right now, but a pretty easy workflow would be to create sponsors for that. So like I talked about how we had sponsors that were our product staff, and we did that only for the expo booth. We actually found a way to, with our engineering team, hide them from the sponsors list. But you could have on the sponsors list, your first platinum sponsor could be tech support or, conference support. And that is a separate chat channel that you can have on that sponsor page. You could also create a session for it. You could have, with conferences, since you have concurrent sessions all day, you could create a session that just runs all day. That's just like the tech support room, where people could come in and do Q&A and chat and ask questions or get help. That could either stream or not to your lobby. That could have session level chat, so that it would be its own chat channel there. And because that's the out of meeting chat experience, so it stays. Another thing you could do that someone had, one of the feedback that we got from Zoomtopia was how cool it would be to kind of run like a morning welcome session separate from your keynote, or maybe it is your keynote and you just plan on it starting 30 minutes early, but having your host sitting there live streaming from your session into the lobby, doing things like, hey, we're so glad you're here. Click on sessions right here. Click on that, make sure you fill out your itinerary, which is right here. Go check out the expo hall. Make sure to see all our sponsor booths. Pay attention to the chat. Oh, I just saw someone bring that message in. That's so funny. You can add a ton of engagement right off the bat there. Yeah. Within that lobby as people get in.
That's good stuff. Yeah, I think, and we aren't even, it's still super early to find those creative avenues that, you didn't develop for, but we begin to build to, right? And during implementation, that's always the exciting part of software is the way it ends up getting used, compared to what it was designed for, usually two different widths of roads. So, hey, if anybody else has questions, certainly feel free to continue to either put them in the chat or raise your hand, and I'll let you jump in. But I wanted to see if Sam has, kind of your team's most creative, proud nugget of a solution that went into Zoomtopia that none of us would know unless you shared it, but something that really stood out, in a creative sense that you never would have gone there till you went there and it worked great and so forth. Anything like that?
Nothing's terribly coming to mind. Like the first thing that comes to mind is the expo hall itself and the way we used it for our product staff, not for our sponsors. Because that's product team was like, hey, we have this new feature. This is what we're thinking of. And it was my team who said, no, this is totally wrong. Like, this is not how we need to use it. We need us on the floor. We need to have the Zoom team out there representing at our own show. I think that's one of the biggest impacts we had on the show right off the bat from my team. I'm trying to think if there was anything else. Kevin, I don't know if you have anything in your head of just things that's like creative behind the scenes workflows or anything.
No, not especially.
A lot of our stuff was not incredibly creative, but just lots of it. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of get on the flip side, and what were the challenges that came up during the event that that might be something that we'd see when we're doing something down the line.
Yeah. So what you're going to see is that nobody is signed into the Zoom app. That's what you're going to see. You're going to see we spun up a call center for speaker support because like we talked a little bit about like chat channels for tech support, but honestly, once they got into the lobby, people are fine. The problem was getting to the lobby because Zoom Events requires you to have a Zoom account, and it requires you to use that Zoom account to register for your ticket, and it requires you to log in with that same Zoom account to the app so that it can cross-check and authenticate you. This all makes a lot of sense. This is a pretty low barrier for entry. It's not that hard. But the general population is not logged into Zoom today. And so that was definitely a hurdle for us, was all of our external speakers and stuff that they kept sending us screenshots of the error message saying, basically saying the ticket can't authenticate against you. You're not logged in with you're not logged in with the account that bought the ticket. And they would send us that saying, I'm logged in, I don't know what's going on. And in the back of the screenshot is the sign-in page. Sitting right in the screenshot they sent me every time. So that's definitely something to look out for you guys as you start to do events on Zoom Events, is just remembering that people to get in need to be, they need to be on a desktop with the latest version, really. And they need to be logged in to the app, not the website, not the browser. You got to log in at events.zoom.us. That's where you find your ticket. And then you got to be logged into the Zoom app with that same account. Go ahead, Kevin.
Now, part of the challenges that we deal with every day is like pre-assigning people to breakout rooms. It's always a total crapshoot, right? And a lot of it has to do with, we assigned this address and they came in with this address.
Right.
And I tend to believe a lot of that has to do with checking the box the last time you logged in that says, remember me. And so then when you click on the link to go to this meeting and it says open in browser, and you do, it just uses that assumptive remember me account. And if that wasn't the account you registered with or we registered you as, you won't even know you come in with the wrong account until you're in with the wrong account. And so is there any ways to circumvent that memory beyond them, the client? I've done it. I've dealt with it myself plenty with all the different accounts I've got, but
so it actually
finally
does
just started on checking it.
It listens to what you're logged in with the browser. If you're clicking a link and it's taking you that way, then it's actually going to authenticate you. This is not Zoom Events. This is Zoom Meetings and Webinars. It authenticates you through the browser, what you're logged into Zoom there as. If you're logged out, then it will ask the app what you're logged in as. But in that situation that you just explained, it should actually be the login from the web. That's the one it's using as it comes in.
But there is no login from the web. I mean,
if you log into
click on
zoom.us.
Well, I understand, but I'm not logged into zoom.us, and I click on meetings all day, every day. It says open in browser, and it launches my client and automatically jumps in on the account that was previously logged in if I checked remember me versus not. And so I may be wrong in my understanding, but that's been my assumption.
No, you are there then. So if you're not logged in the browser and it comes into the app and the app opens and you've told it, remember what I logged in as and log me in as that, then it remembers what you logged in as and it logs you in as that. It's doing exactly what you asked it to.
Yeah. And then that's where I think the potential difference of that account that it remembered versus the account that you really
thought you wanted to use or would have used if it had asked you to manually sign in. And that's true. And like from a user, that's definitely a place to catch some people. But like the option has been given for both and it's specified. So that's one of the great things about Zoom Events is that it is, so in that case, if you're logged in as the wrong thing, it's going to give you a pop-up that says the ticket is for someone else than what you're logged in as. And you have to go log out and log in as the thing that matches the ticket itself, because that has to match. But once you get them into the events that way, they're log in with who registered as the ticket. I'm logged in as that on the app and the site. That gets you into the event. And now Pre-assigning breakouts is not currently available within Zoom events, but when it is, it's going to be perfect.
Yeah,
Because for the first time ever, we truly know who everyone is.
Yeah.
We've truly authenticated them, and we've already proven it because they didn't get here if we hadn't. So that's going to be really great.
Can you with accuracy answer this? I mean, I'll test it after we end the meeting, but if my client had its last experience was Remember Me, and so it remembers that account, but it's not the account that's tied to the ticket. So if I logged into Zoom.us with the correct account and then clicked on the link in the ticket, will the Zoom.us current logged in account override what the client is remembering? Who will win?
For a meeting or a webinar, web would win. For events, they have to match, and it's going to look at both.
Okay.
So you're saying ticket. If it's a ticket, that's Zoom events. They have to match. So if it was a Zoom event and they were different, it's going to tell you this ticket is for somebody else. You got to use a different login. If it's a Zoom meeting or a webinar and you click a link and you're logged in the browser, it'll use what you logged into the browser with.
So it'll push that through a client, even if the client is remembering a different login.
Yep. Which is why I'll see my team join meetings all the time with like we have a bunch of production accounts. I'll see them pop in with one of those, even though they never log into the app with those. They're just logging into the web and joining down. It's why I always suggest for my team, like that window I'm showing you there where I'm logged in as a service account to build that event, that's an incognito browser. I always use incognito browsers if I'm doing not my main account.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yep. All right, now go ahead, Kevin.
I just want to tag along on that question about like things to watch out for. So one of the things that I noticed, I was part of the team that was doing basically the playing back the pre-recorded breakout sessions. We had several people that were established as leads on breakout sessions, which means they could get into the event or they could get into the session early. We had some tight turns, so we couldn't always beat them there, beat them to the session. So essentially they would claim host being the first one in. So then we would have to ask them to give us host. They didn't always exactly know how. So there's a little bit of a back and forth there to keep in mind. Try to beat people in, but honestly, doing events for 15 years and breakouts for a lot of that as well. I know from in-person events, people show up 30 minutes early to their sessions, and the same thing happened virtually as well. So it's to be expected, right? But keep that in mind. And then to go along with that, not everyone knows that when you're in practice session, you shouldn't click start until it's time to start the webinar. So we had several sessions that started early, and keep in mind, we're watching up to 4 sessions each at a time. So we don't always have our eyes on that exact computer, but we turn and see this session is recording and it's in progress. So we'd have to end it, relaunch it, and then go find the session again within the agenda, click on it, start it in practice mode, which gives us host, because chances are we beat them back. And then when they rejoin, frantically chat to them, do not start this session. So
because there's no way to get back to practice without doing exactly what you just did. You have to kill it and start over.
Yeah. So that brings up that for conference, when you add your speakers, you actually have both a primary speaker and speakers. The primary speaker gets alt host because it's expecting that you are hosting a session or an event with concurrent events, and it's probably not you going into each of them to deal with it. It's probably going to be whoever your main speaker is can start their own event. So that primary speaker gets alt host, the other speakers don't. And that's what was causing what Kevin was talking about there.
So if you have hired help, if you have strictly technical moderators behind the scene in those webinars, they need to be the alt host, and the primary speaker should not be assigned, or the tech admin gets primary speaker and then everybody else gets others.
You're a little limited there because you have to have a primary speaker. You can't not.
Sure.
And and the primary speaker is listed publicly. So, when you go to the session page, it's going to say these are the speakers. You don't want to have every session say Stream Sharks is the primary or is speaking at it. So you're a little limited there. Your primary speakers are going to have alt hosts, but you can totally give alt host to your tech team who's going to do it. And that's one of the things I did on the CSV, because it's really easy to do when you're doing a CSV. Is I created a list of all the emails that I wanted my entire team. And then I took that whole list of emails and I put it on every session in the CSV. So when I imported it, my team got alternate host access to every session.
Yeah, I'll say, I think that's a level of inserted risk when there's a tech team behind the scenes that can't protect the success of the program, because the primary speaker that has to be published has to have alt hosts, which means they have the same privileges as the tech team, which means they can screw it up, which means my ability to protect the success of the program diminishes greatly. And just as a point of feedback, and out here in the real world, man, and I'm not saying you guys aren't, but that's the same reason we don't assign more than absolutely necessary co-host. I mean, I've been on job after job after job where all of a sudden stuff just goes away. Like shares are killed. It's like, and the show caller's screaming at me because I'm the only one that he thinks is behind the scenes, when there's 6 to 10 other co-hosts that have the absolute same ability to trash a show, if you will, by clicking a wrong button. Whether it's intentional or accidental makes no difference. The result is the same. And I think that because that primary speaker is required and published to the public, that's a really tough spot to be in, actually, when there's assigned technical teams that carry the liability of the success of the delivery. So
my thought on that, and my idea that I'd had before, I haven't talked to Sam about this at all. So Sam, feel free to tell me this is not a good idea, but I've thought about that in the past, and the solution that had occurred to me was to assign the primary speaker role to essentially a non-person, essentially a login that you can use to get in if you need to, but that you're going to be going in as your own login anyway, and then name that your conference name. So essentially it becomes a speaker listed within that agenda for that session. That could just be an extra description field, or some other use for that speaker role. But with great power comes great responsibility, and if we didn't have the ability to hand off duties to certain types of users and whatnot, then that would just be a feature request. So it's a double-edged sword for sure.
So here's the better way to approach it. So, because you also have to remember that this platform is incredibly powerful, but it's not completely designed for, like, one of the big selling points for this platform is going to be its ease of use and its low cost. Those are both major selling points for the platform. And at the same time, it's also for power users, and we are power users, and everyone in this room is a power user. But we do have to weigh that with it. Now, a couple of things that are important to remember. The actual scheduling host, so the email that scheduled it, can always come in and claim host, right? Because that's what happens automatically. If the scheduling host joins a session, they claim host. They take it back. Doesn't matter who had it. No one can hijack it and keep it from you, right? So you have that. The host is all, if that host never joins, and instead it's just a bunch of alt hosts who join, primary speaker or assigned alt host, our moderator, whoever's in first becomes the host, and then everyone else gets co-host who would be given alt host right, and it can be taken away by the host. So you also have that layer. The next layer is going towards the one that Kevin just talked about. And that's what the workaround that you can do if you're doing a moderated panel, like what you're talking about here. The workaround that Jeff, you can do is take your primary speaker, put the name of your primary speaker, and then put a fake email. And then go down to the panelist field and put the speaker's actual email. And now you just gave that speaker panelist access to the session, which once you get in is the same. You did not give them alt host. You didn't give them co-host at any point in time. You've given them the access they need. You have not given them the access they don't need. You have not changed any of the names that people see publicly. And then you give your guy alt host. So you have a way to use those names. It's just something you need to keep in mind as you're building that CSV to make sure that you put them all in the right place. And all of those are editable after you publish. It's just a little bit of work to make sure that you get them all in the right place and get the ticket given to the right person who needs it.
That's where my mind was heading, and I think you just explained it a lot better than I did.
Yeah, ultimately, that's the thing is the speakers are publicly listed, but there's nothing that says that you have to use their real email there. Go ahead, Chris.
I mean, I'm not a developer or anything like that, but I was just thinking like, well, maybe you can just add a flag for when you define the primary speaker, a little checkbox that says, make this guy the alt host or not, and so that this way that resolves that problem that Jeff was saying. That's all. Feature request. That's all.
Right. Yep. And those will absolutely be considered because there's going to be a million of those things that we find all the way across. Some of them that have workarounds like I just described, some of them that don't. Some of them that won't get considered until we get 10 events in and then have a new thing. At this point, this platform now has one really big event under its belt. So we're definitely nowhere close to saying it's done. But the whole time we're going to be trying to keep it through a lens of making sure it's both powerful enough for these power users in this room and simple enough for the business users that are going to use it as a simple and cheap solution that has the features they need, and hopefully avoid places where we have, because not that this doesn't mean that that's a bad idea, but the pushback on it will be that if you give that option and then they don't check the box on anyone, and now the host has 10 sessions and by their own configuration can't start them all because they misconfigured, and now you gave them a way to fail trying to give more power. And I don't know that, like, we have to figure out lots of decisions like that get made at a lot of places to end up with the end result to hopefully end up the best for all cases. Go ahead, Robert.
Sam, I'm just trying to summarize in my head what would happen if I now have a client who wants to host a large event, and could you just walk me through what we would need to do? Because I'm getting the impression that I would need to contact you and your team, pull your team on board, get the license bought by the client, and then I sort of get pushed out of my role quite considerably. And I'm not, maybe I'm missing something here, but could you just walk us through that, please?
Yeah. So at the end of the day, right now, the conferences feature requires event services support because of its age, feature set, complexity, all of that. A little bit of that is ignoring what you guys are doing in a slight way. Now, that's not to say that there's not a good way to work it there, where essentially what would end up happening is you would probably be the one hiring event services. The customer would be the one buying the license, because that's how that works. And then event services would be working with you to figure out, based on your skill and comfort level, along with ours, the division of duties. Because at the end of the day, event services is on an hourly model. So we're just charging for hours that we work. So, you're negotiating with the client based on whatever pricing model you like to work with. And then you're working with us to say, okay, I want to do this. Let's have you do that. You guys do the initial config, and then, I'll handle all of the in-session support myself with me and my team, that sort of thing. And we figure out what makes sense for the current availability and the customer.
So I think back on my history in IT, working for Dell and Citrix and others, and their professional services group, right? Like they could always go in and do what any local integration partner could provide as well. Maybe it's availability, maybe it's the customer's trust in the vendor name versus a integrator partner name, things like that. But one thing held sure, so that they wouldn't piss off their partner channel community, was they had to set their prices high. And they were really, the vendor was always kind of the premium provider. Do you guys, if the customer were to hire you versus we were to hire you, is there a different pricing table at that? And kind of what I'm getting at is it a reasonable thought that we can go resell your professional services if you're already at a premium, and we expect to be able to put some margin on it, which would make it, maybe unpalatable for the customer at that. So and this is coming, I have no idea what your pricing is and how many of those types of engagements, take place with success and so forth. So, and I don't know how much you can respond to it.
So we don't have a we don't have a channel program for professional services. So we're not in the business of allowing or focusing on reselling of our services, but we definitely do and have been working with a lot of different companies where, they've taken it as a value add of, we're going to do your whole event. We're going to be your production company, but we're going to have a guy from Zoom on the call. And so like we're doing the bulk of it, but we're going to have Zoom themselves watching in the background and just being able to slap our name onto their service as a value add, where, maybe they're making a markup off our price. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just making their buck through the rest of the contract. I don't think we're in the market of kind of having a middleman reselling our services and handling just the management portion of it. Rather, I think what we would be, you shouldn't, I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, but we don't have a discount to where you would be able to put a markup on our services and still stay competitive against our services directly. What we do have is the ability to come in and sell you whatever you need from us so that you can be the rest of the value add reseller. And this is going to go back to something that I'm pretty sure I've said before. I don't remember if I've said it in this group, but I say this sort of thing a lot. And that's that our team is relatively small in the grand scheme of things. We have no visions of running every event that happens on Zoom. We absolutely know that we need to empower. It's why I'm here, is because we need to empower producers like you to go do good work with Zoom. You guys are already using Zoom. We need to make sure you're successful with it. That's our end goal. And then to make our direct customers successful as well. So in the grand scheme of things, we're not coming in trying to get all of your business. We would much rather make you all successful and let you all make a bunch of money doing what you do best, and then come in to help you. This is one of the reasons why we've never had before a feature that was gated behind our services. There's never been like, oh, you want extra Zoom level access? Well, you got to have them. This is a little bit of a special case because of the nature of the product and the scale of the product. And so we're happy to talk to any of you about particular jobs and specifics on it and see what makes sense for this job where you're doing, as much as you can and making the good margins that you should make on those with your labor and your team and your resources, and then pulling us in for the part that needs it to be us.
No, it makes a ton of sense. I mean, for me to be able to say, hey, client, I've got relationships at Zoom that are technically the best, and go value sell that as, that extra body, that's monitoring or providing counsel or consult along the way and so forth is a huge add. So no, I appreciate the clarity on that. Can I ask real quick, you tee it up, you can either shut it down immediately because it's just not your wheelhouse, or before we end, it's just a matter of what do you know about backstage? And Robert, by chance, has his hand up. he heard something differently than I heard about
Okay.
Backstage, and he's in the language interpretation business. I heard that language interpreters can sit in the backstage and do their job to the session. I believe you, Robert, said you heard exactly the opposite of that.
You know,
do you
I
know?
met with the webinar PM yesterday to make sure I was ready for the backstage questions, and that didn't come up. I am not totally sure. I know, like, in general, I can't sit backstage and talk to the main meeting. So it would be a little weird for me to be able to do that as an interpreter. But also, because the interpretation channel is already kind of so isolated separately, I wouldn't be 100% caught off guard if that were the case, but I can neither confirm nor deny that specific portion of it.
Because, I mean, Backstage is getting a return feed, right? Audio and
Yes.
video both. So, and that's what they need to hear is the primary language to be able to
Yep.
do their job if their interpretation channel went back. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to find out. I just thought I'd ask, and I don't know what else you know, or how many of you in this meeting have either heard or missed that there's a green room coming, basically, for it's webinar only, as I
Yes.
understand it.
Yeah.
But there will be a green room that your panelists can check into and remain in until they need to go on stage and so forth. So it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and do a quick overview of what Backstage is. So Backstage is a new feature coming for webinars only. And that feature will be part of the Zoom Events license. Now, don't let that confuse you. You have to buy a Zoom Events license to get access to the feature, but it is a webinar feature. So it can be done with webinars that are not part of a Zoom event. And that's a really important distinction because there are lots of things that are limiting about Zoom events. There are lots of things great about them. There are lots of things that make them not the right choice all the time. There are plenty of reasons today that you want to be in a meeting or a webinar, and that's the end of the story. So webinars that are not part of Zoom events can use Backstage. Backstage, it basically creates a second area from the main webinar, and that's where you're able to you can sit and talk to your panelists. You have a one-way video feed with audio coming from the main broadcasted webinar where all the attendees are able to watch back to you, and it's a green room all day. You can move people both individually or in groups, so I can like tee up a whole panel and move them up into the main room. Let's see, other main features. Every one of us individually as panelists has control of our own level or audio of if we're listening to the main feed, and it's going to be a lot easier to talk over versus like someone reverse sharing a screen up into it type thing. And yeah, that's kind of that feature. I'm trying to think if there's any other real high level points to hit on it. You have separate chat and a change in the way chat is managed so that you're able to talk between them. I guess what I'm going to say is from a practice standpoint, I expect everybody in this room to start running webinars with two devices, one that lives in the broadcast side and one that lives in the green room side. That broadcast side is where you'll throw up your pre-show slides and music while you guys are backstage getting tech checked and ready. Mm-hmm. And then you're going to start pushing people forward, but you're going to manage the whole show from the backstage side. Robert, go ahead.
And I'm assuming that when someone's on stage in the webinar, you can bring him back to the backstage.
Yes, yeah. You can bring them back in groups or individually. Yep.
Okay.
So the host has all sorts of ability to push and pull them, and then the panels themselves have the ability to move, or you can decide they can't.
Yeah. I have one more question. Sorry, Sam, just about my previous question. But if we finished off on the backstage, I don't want to stop this topic.
I just want to answer Michelle's question from chat. That again, it's not part of the webinar license. It's part of the Zoom Events license, and then it applies to webinars. And that's slightly confusing. But if you start thinking about, at one point, it was going to be called Events Plus. That's what it is. It's like Zoom Events is both like the site and the ticketing method and everything, but is also going to be the license going forward where you're going to start seeing some of these more production heavy features come out. Only one backstage. So no breakouts within the backstage. Kevin, did you get that from Kat?
Yes, I did.
Cool. So Kat confirmed interpreters need to be in the main room to actively be talking as interpreters. Okay, so now with that, Robert, take us away to our previous question.
Yeah, so the previous question was, so I come back and I have this customer and it needs to run an event and I need to get in touch with you. First question, how do I do that? And you also said that you have a fairly small team. And of course, talking about events consumes a lot of time because it's like a pre-sales function more than actually running the event itself. So how do you do that? How do we do that?
Yeah. So what I would like you to do, what would work best on our end would be for you to gather as much information as you can, and then probably to send that over to us. The way you get to us is there are only 36 people on the call. If you're talking for this purpose, that's how you get to us. Interrupt into chat. For everybody watching the stream and on Facebook and watching the replays, contact your AE, contact sales, and they'll create an engagement. But you get to us, and then the more information you have at the beginning, the better, to basically see if we need to do a discovery call with you to try to figure out what's going on. And then if we need a discovery call with the client, or if you've already done it with the client, or if you need to pre-do it and then we have to discover with client or whatever. I'm a big fan of not having like an intro call to then do a discovery call, to do a discovery call, to do a discovery call with all the different panels. But, you know, every show is different, which is why we have discovery. So, you know, figure out what works best for you to get into that discovery with us. And then from there, we'll get the info we need to work with you to turn it into a scope of work. And like I said, for you guys, I imagine for a good portion of you, that's going to be us giving a scope of work to you and you managing the relationship with the client. We don't want to step on your toes there at all. There are also, I'm sure, are going to be plenty of people watching this who are the client and are just going to be coming to us for that help. But again, we don't want to step on your toes. We're happy to subcontract with you.
Any other questions for these guys? You guys have done a killer job. Tom?
Kevin and Sam, I just had one other question about Zoomtopia. How many, I gleaned from what Kevin said that you were covering about 4 sessions each as support during the thing?
It depends. For the my specific team built out a studio in Austin and was doing pre-record playback for pre-recorded sessions, which was a good part of the show, but not near all. So for us, at any given point in time, there would be 2 or 3 sessions actually going live with their files and 2 or 3 sessions in practice mode for the next time block. Zoomtopia as a whole had 13 concurrent sessions throughout our breakout hours. For all of those doing live sessions where they were doing like all the moderation, the typical event hosting, those were all 1-to-1. So we had a team of our team. I think we had close to 40 people from event services working on the show to support the 120 sessions we did.
Well, it was a great job.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Michelle.
Sorry, if I can maybe just ask, I don't know if it's a related question, but just on the interpreters, if you do the recording, we saw that the interpreters is not on the recording.
Correct.
The cloud recording. Is there in the pipeline to actually enable that, or is there a way that we can actually do that, or not really?
Recording team is looking into it to enhance that. For the moment, what you can do is you can do local records, including interpreted audio. So if you do a local record and you're listening to a different audio channel, that's the one that will record.
Okay. And then on the cloud recording, is there an option? Well, I haven't seen an option, but maybe I've just missed it, to actually record what you as host has on your screen. So not only record the active speaker or record the screen share plus the active speaker, but actually have, when you have the spotlighting or stuff like that, to actually record what's on the host like the local recording usually does.
Yeah, there's not a follow host view cloud record. So the cloud record, you can record all the views you want and then later go back and pick and choose and edit, but there's not a follow host to give you like a pre-edited switch between for cloud.
Okay.
Um,
Thank you.
Marty had a question about interpreters. If interpreters are in the main room, how do they deliver audio to the attendees without stepping on the original audio? What I want to start with is, Marty, are you familiar with the interpretation feature of Zoom already?
No, not specifically.
Okay, cool. So the way the interpretation feature works is you get assigned as an interpreter and it says which two languages are you interpreting between, because interpretation is a two-way street. So I say I'm doing English to Spanish. And then it gives you two buttons at the bottom then to say which channel are you talking on. And so whichever one you're talking on, that goes to the interpreted channel. And then anyone listening to the interpreted channel will hear the original audio until an interpreter starts talking, at which point that ducks and they hear the interpreter audio over it, but they still hear it a little bit. The reason it's important to distinguish that two-way street and everything is that if I were to add Spanish interpretation to this meeting happened in English, there would be an English channel. And if we were to have someone come on and ask a question in Spanish and the interpreter clicked over to English, that interpreter could interpret it backwards onto the English channel. If you would listen to the original audio channel, you would just hear that person talking Spanish and you heard me talking English. If you listen to the English channel, you would hear the interpretation over them, and then you would hear my original audio when you hear me.
So when you get assigned to be an interpreter, so if I assigned Marty, you are now an English to Spanish interpreter, and I say go, what it's done is it's rerouted your return audio gate from the main meeting to the now created Spanish channel that anybody who wants to hear the Spanish can tune into. Because a button that's not there right now because I don't have interpretation turned on will come on everybody's toolbar that languages are available, and they can pop up the menu and select the language they want to listen to.
Yep.
So it's literally somebody in the meeting. We could watch you interpret if we wanted to, right? I could assign you as an interpreter. We could watch your lips move, but we wouldn't hear you unless we were to change to the Spanish channel, which is what you got routed to by assignment. Yeah, it's pretty slick.
It's also important to keep in mind if you're doing a session like some of our breakout sessions where you have pre-recorded content, you have panelists from relating to that content somehow in there to answer questions, maybe at the end of the session or by chat or whatever. And you have interpreters in the room. Interpreters essentially act as panelists. So if you want panelists to be muted the whole time and not interrupt the pre-recorded content, you're also going to be muting the interpreters. So there's no muting interpreters and not muting panelists. It's
right.
One or the other.
So the re-rack of that answer is that if any of you guys are using the not allowing panelists to unmute themselves option, which is a great option if you're doing pre-recorded, like what we had a lot of is we were playing back a pre-recorded session, but we have those same panelists or some of them in to answer Q&A and respond to chat at the same time, so we don't lose that aspect. And for most of the time, we would want them not to be able to unmute so that they don't unmute and start interrupting the video accidentally. But with you have interpreters in the mix, even though they're assigned interpretation, even though they're not talking on your main audio channel, you have to allow panelists to unmute for them to be able to unmute. Yep.
Just on that, I put a feature request in over a year ago to alter that so that when you mute all, you don't mute the interpreters. Or when you mute all, you allow the interpreters to unmute themselves. If you say that the panelists can't unmute themselves. But just on the interpreters,
I would imagine an interpreter, it's not like an instantaneous, oh my gosh, I'm muted, because that's an outbound gate that got closed. And so only if they're seeing the mute icon come up does it actually get their attention, right?
Well, there is a notification that says you are muted.
There?
Yeah,
Okay.
once you start talking.
it's a bummer. It really is a bummer. And we put this feature request in. It's been put in for over a year ago, and still in the pipeline somewhere. But going back to when you were defining this conference in the beginning, Sam, you actually defined the interpreters in the at the conference level. Does that mean that?
No, they're at the session level.
There's okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so they are at the session level. So you can have different interpreters on different sessions. You can reuse them, all that good stuff. Yeah. I want to answer Emmanuel's question in chat real quick. Is there a way to enable NDI without a business account? Totally, because NDI is available on Zoom rooms. It doesn't have anything to do with desktop client or user licenses. And you can have a Zoom room on a pro account.
Point being, that's the only place Zoom supports NDI is a Zoom room, right? I mean, that's
Zoom rooms
is
the native NDI integration. You can, of course, use NDI tools with the Zoom desktop client all you want for scan, convert, and whatnot, but the native integration is with Zoom rooms from Zoom. Greg?
Greg Gibson, you're up. And muted.
Yeah, out on a bike ride on my phone, and so I apologize for not being on camera, but I'm a sweaty mess.
I just got you unmuted, so I don't know if we missed anything. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I'm sorry, I'm out on a bike ride and on the phone, and I'm a sweaty mess, so I'm not going to be on camera, but I was listening to some of the conversation, and I got to tell you, Sam, you stopped me in my tracks, and I had to stop and listen a bit, and I just got to tell you, the answer to the question about Zoom conference really just put a damper on my enthusiasm for the platform. I was loving it, but now that I know that I've got to involve a third party in it now, and that the third party is going to manage it, and I know you said you're not competing, the intent is not to compete with us for clients, but the fact is now we are competing for clients. And I can tell you, hang on, I can tell you I have been in that position before where I am forced to resell a product where somebody else, where the provider of that product is also selling the same product. And it did not go very well.
So let me.
And so the only thing I would say, Sam, and I didn't hear the whole conversation. So I don't mean to cut you off. I just want to finish because, but it seems to me, I heard you say that your resources were limited, right? And it just seems to me that if you or yourself are working with limited resources, it would make a lot more sense if you cut your funnel down so that your points of contact were a smaller subset than everybody, theoretically everybody in the world. And so if you do have a limited set of resources, at what point do your resources extinguish? Are you going to be able to do 50 conferences a month, or can you do 100 conferences a month? What's going to happen when you get to 1,000 conferences a month? So it's a little concerning to me. And so anyway, I know you have an answer ready, so I'm prepared to listen.
Yeah, so the answer is to clarify, and it's a big clarification, that is not the plan for that feature. Zoom Conferences is going to be available for you to buy and use on your own. That is what the feature is designed for and planned for. This is for early access.
Zoom says, hey, we haven't released this product yet, but we have used it. And until we release it, if you have a qualified need for it, as long as we have one of our professionals assist you with it while it's in this unreleased period, that's the time frame you were talking about, right, Sam?
Exactly.
Because once it's released, it's 100% our product, whoever purchases it, right?
Yes. This is not at all intended to change the business model here on our part, on your part, or anything. That's not, and that's why we're not going to spin up a partner program for this, because this is a short-term solution here. The short term is the feature is not released. It is not a public feature. It is not. They also want me to make sure that I'm saying it's not a beta. It's not an untested feature. We just did our show on it. But it is a new feature, and it is still being worked on in some of its feature set and some of its ads. And because of that, we were successful in our show because of both our focus and immense experimentation time and knowledge of the product that we have, as well as our direct relationship with engineering that we have. My ability to go to one of the engineers and say, hey, I need to get this pulled or changed on the database level. That is why we were successful with our show at this point. And so today, I'm not ready to give you a conference license and have you go run a conference tomorrow by yourself. you would not be successful with it. We fully intend to release this product, and we're not talking years. I don't have a timeline, but it's the short-term timeline is if you need immediate access, you need to involve us. We 100% want to sell this product to Jeff, to Ed, to Robert, to Greg, and let you go do what you do with your customer like you do it today with the new feature.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, I got you now.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so I'm a little confused. So you're saying this is a feature that's not going to be available to the general public, and we have to reach out to Zoom events directly in order to access this?
Today. This feature is not released today, but I can get you early access today if you're using event services to support the event.
So Zoom events can be purchased, just not the conference subcomponent of it, the multi-session, multi-day.
No, I understand. I understand.
Okay.
Because I'll tell you, Sam, I loved the platform. I was hugely impressed by it, and I actually have a use case for it that I could use it for the first or second week in November. So maybe we can chat about that offline. But I appreciate the clarification. Though it's just like I said, I've been in that situation before where I'm a forced reseller of a service that's being that I'm in competition with by the person providing or the company providing that service, and it doesn't go well for the third parties because when push comes to shove, the provider of the service is going to take care of themselves. So that's what happens when you jump in a conversation in the middle sometimes, and maybe you don't understand all the facts. So those were my concerns.
And those concerns are totally valid. I definitely understand the concern, and it's definitely why this isn't a change in the business model. This isn't us trying to, if we were starting a reseller program or something like that, we'd be doing it a whole lot differently than we are now. What this is me giving you guys, it's me giving customers, but it's me giving you guys, it's me giving you a way to get to it for a early November show where you need to be building it out next week. In 2 weeks here, the feature is not going to be released next week. So it gets access for a show like that needs it. And also, look, we have something to gain here too. We need shows happening on it so we get the feedback, so we get the testing, so we get the changes so that when we do launch it, it's ready. And also, AV Trainer had dropped in chat here, so does this mean that there's training on the product in prep for the full public release? That's kind of exactly it. There's not training and documentation adequate to launch today, partially because we're flying with features. We're coming off the heels of Zoomtopia and putting in changes and taking that feedback and making it, making it a better platform. With the documentation and everything, it truly is. We want you to be successful. You wouldn't be successful with it today. So this is the way that you can be. And then in the very near future here, you'll be able to be successful. We'll have the documentation ready to go. We'll have the product locked, and it'll be something that these power users like you are going to be able to take and rock and roll with.
Awesome.
Sam,
thanks. I apologize for jumping in with the alarm bell, but I just, I heard that piece of the conversation. And it raised the hair on my neck a little bit. So I just wanted to get clarification.
And it's great clarification to give, because if one person has the concern, then other people have the concern and didn't voice it. So I'm glad to give that.
I'll reach out to you directly about the event in November.
Sounds good. Thanks, Greg.
Sam, do you have a few bullet points that would say it would be the answers to, although conference for Zoom events is not yet released, it's been proven on now how many attendees, how many, do you have a few bullet points that if we get into this pre-sale conversation with a client, for them to accept an unreleased version of something would be next to impossible, but with some proven from the vendor bullet points of something to the magnitude of Zoomtopia, are there a few that you can share as far as some numbers that would represent the success?
Yeah, so you're going to see a lot more numbers coming down in the future, but it's important to know that it's not a beta product. It is a feature toggle on the released product. At the end of the day, we just ran our own conference on it. We ran Zoomtopia. We had, as far as the platform's concerned, no issues with the product. We had 120 some odd sessions. We had 700 some odd people who had special tickets of some kind, speakers, sponsors, panelists, that sort of thing. We had 49,000 some odd people register for the show. And it's built on the backbone of meetings and webinars. Events, at the end of the day, events is a database. Events is how it's a database and a web page. It's how do I track these different sessions and display them for the users. At the end of the day, you're coming into meetings and webinars is tested rock solid at 50,000 users.
Yeah, I kind of think of it as a marketer of information and a dispatcher that gets you where you need to go, right? And we've already been where we've been, which are meetings and webinars, and it's just a conduit to those. So yeah, I get that. And that's what it's needed. That's what we've needed. That's what we've been asking for. That's what competitive platforms have been building, with the exception of the proven meetings and webinar component, and they've had to develop that as well.
Well, that's what, at the end of the day, I started at the beginning about how my team is here to support events using Zoom products, and that's meetings, webinars, and Zoom events. Meetings and webinars still have a very real place in events. Zoom events is a piece of that. And especially as you start talking conferences and stuff, like Zoom events has a lot going for it, with the ease of the creation and management of the links. But there are still shows. We're doing a massive conference for someone in a couple of weeks here. That's all just using webinars. It's using webinars, and they have another provider for the front end, and it's all that's handling registration and sessions on the website. And then it turns into a Zoom webinar link, and that's how you get into each session. And that there's still absolutely a place for that, 100%.
Yeah, I describe, I don't know if I said it last time you were in the kitchen or not, but Zoom has done an incredible job making the world believe that they've created the easiest tool in the world to use. Now, that sounds facetious, a little sarcastic, and it kind of is to a degree. They really have done a great job, because the result of that is the massive adoption of the tool. And when a customer makes that decision, I say go for it, because what Zoom has done is, hey, I don't have to worry about making sure that a mobile connector can, a mobile user can connect, or a tablet user, or a PC or a Mac. You guys have already created that client, right? And corporate America, for all over the world, not just corporate America, but corporations throughout the world have adopted the product, which means they've already punched it through their firewalls. It's already met all their criteria. So there's no success in trying to change that. It would just be a futile effort, and a very offensive one to a lot of organizations at that. But you just realize we're in a great position with that, and can continue to successfully just stretch this to be better and better and better, for sure. I totally agree. There's just way too much momentum, behind it, and for years, all my life, I see, I hear, I'm guilty myself of expecting the perfect tool. Nobody produces the perfect solution. Nobody purchases the perfect solution, but we constantly measure it up against what we think should be perfect, right? And it battles itself all the time. And what we're looking for in security appliances, whatever the case is, the car, the vehicle, none of them are going to be perfect, but they're the best for the dollar in our budget and for our needs, right? And Zoom rivals, there's no question about it. So yeah, you guys are doing just amazing things, and we're in a really narrow space in this conversation today, right? Of all the different things Zoom is doing and embarking on and so forth. So
it's always interesting to, I started off in the Zoom room side of the company, and realizing that I was in professional services inside of Zoom room. So I was 1% of an organization that was 1% of Zoom. And it sometimes is that way over on events, except I will say that, obviously you're seeing Zoom events is a massive initiative for us. This is absolutely a driving force behind our company right now and where we want to expand to. And I think I said this last time that like I hope that my appearance coming here today and talking to you guys is evidence of that, of how seriously we at Zoom take it. Me and my team's existence, with us being with the backgrounds that we have in the events industry, working for this company to focus on making sure that we are making teams like yours successful. I want to answer. Well, I guess Kevin just answered Michelle's question, but the difference between Zoom events and Zoom conferences. Zoom events is the product, that's the license that you're getting. And within that, you can create different types of events, of which you could have a single session, a summit, and we'll soon be able to, on your own, Greg, build conferences. Cool. There is not currently a in-person training or certification for Zoom events. But we're in the early stages of potentially reevaluating and looking deeper into that. So I have nothing of any merit to say past that, but we're thinking about it. Robert, go ahead.
It's coming up to midnight where I am, so I'm going to be leaving just now, but I'd like to just thank you personally and your team, because for Zoomtopia, you did such a brilliant job. Zoomtopia just opened out the whole of Zoom to us, so that was so cool. And now that I understand what you did behind it, yeah, kudos. Brilliant job. Thank you.
Yeah,
so
totally agree. Totally back that +1, +10. I've heard some people provide some feedback. I mean, you might have heard it on office hours. I'm not sure if you were there when they said it, but too many sessions. It's like, I think, I think a comment like that represents. I wished I could have just seen it down my track, because not only was it the width of the Zoom portfolio, it was then reached out to the world and the width of the verticals that you really focus on as well. So the tracks, right? So you had products, and then you had tracks that are more related to the world, healthcare, education, and so forth. And so naturally it added up to, a lot of opportunity. But I think on the flip side, it's like, where's that comment come from? The comment comes from, I believe, a laundry list of choices, and therefore you feel like you got left out, right? Like you couldn't attend them all and so forth. But then the final answer and result is the recordings are all posting on Monday. Yep. And so it does, it falls outside. There's only so many hours a day. It doesn't matter whether it's an in-person event or a remote event. The clock is still 24 hours long. And so you can't, one can't dedicate just these 12 hours while the event is live and say, I've got to be able to get it all then. It's just not a reasonable, I guess, expectation that recordings are out there, and they, your recordings, they have been immediately available on Zoomtopia, right? Not Zoomtopia, but inside, as long as they kept that open. But now you're shifting them to Zoomtopia.com. But I'm assuming in the future they'll be immediately available. Now, I was talking to Denise, who hosts the Zoom events group in Facebook, and she said that the archivability is limited to 7 days of the recordings.
That's for single session events. For summits and conferences, the recordings live on as long as the lobby does. I don't know how long the lobby can live. I think it's a year, maybe. So significantly more than 7 days. There's a lot of moving parts to the video on demand aspect of Zoom events right now, and it's not there. The video on demand aspect is really yet to be flushed out. We first got our conference going and our day of show, and now we're going to be shifting focus into that to make sure that you keep the cloud recording experience that you're used to on Zoom, that has all the options, the different views and the transcripts and all the new features that we're putting there, and takes advantage of all the other pieces of the platform and makes it accessible and gives you the options that you're expecting to have there for the ability for attendees to like buy or register for post-event recording access and on-demand and deep linking sessions and all those things that you would expect out of a real video on-demand platform.
Well, and then I in my days of, being a software developer for many years of my career as well, is one of the last things to happen is that developers develop are the reports. And the reportable data, because once the show's over, the audience wants to see the recordings, the customers want to see the data. How many people, how long did they go, what were their individual tracks, all kinds of data to justify, right, their expense, to hand chunks of that to their sales organizations to make a go of it, depending on what type of conference it was and so forth. So I would imagine a whole lot more reporting is going to come due and be asked for and so forth as well.
Yeah, because again, we are the users of our own platform. So believe me, like those chats are all flying right now with all of those reports that you mentioned going out to all the different stakeholders and owners across the company. So since we are using this platform, we used it for Academy, we used it for Zoomtopia, we're using it again for our internal sales kickoff growth summit. We're going to be using it a whole lot, and you're going to keep seeing us using it. And because we're using it, we're going to be, along with the direct access we have to our customers using it, you're going to see lots of improvements everywhere that they need to happen.
Yeah. No, you kind of close on the exact right point. Really, is that I think maybe it was the little promo we did the other night was, it's not I don't like the reference of they're eating their own dog food. I'd really rather say they're drinking their own champagne.
I listened to the stream yesterday where you went into that whole thing about it, and that my favorite is definitely drinking our own Kool-Aid, and I'm stuck on that one. But
yeah, absolutely. It's one of those things, but it's super important for, I think, all of us to remember and recognize. I mean, the courage, literally the courage that it took to go public with tens of thousands of registrants on a product that's not released to those who are registering even, is amazing to me, and the trust the executives have to have in their development team and marketing and support and everything to be able to survive that. And I mean, goodness sakes, the stock market can be, the stock price can be affected by one executive's poor decision after hours, let alone tens of thousands of people in an event worldwide, like something could be crushing. So I find it absolutely fascinating that that exposure was there and it was a success, and I'm sure well measured, but yeah, it's great stuff. I mean, it represents so well. I mean, I don't know of a large software company that's ever really done that before. So it's good.
Yeah. We had a question in the chat about the recordings for Zoomtopia and the non-audio video components, the chat, the Q&A, slide decks, that sort of thing. Those will not be going up onto Zoomtopia.com. Specific slide decks and stuff, you can reach out to sometimes you can reach out to your account rep to see if they can chase it down for slides, but only the audio video is going up this year. But that's one of the things and Kevin is answering this, that like from a Zoom cloud recording standpoint, it's recording the Q&A, it's recording the poll results, it's recording the chat, it's recording all of that. And that's what I'm talking about with the kind of what you're expecting from a Zoom cloud recording share link. And that's not what we're going to be using to host these because of the way the system works this year. But in the future, I think that's what you can expect to see from Zoom events, is a better experience closer to that.
Cool. Very cool. I know Ed was there, but he had to drop, it looked like, but he said thank you on his way out. Anybody else? I know we're heading down a little bit, and but if there's any other questions, tee them up now. I think I'm feeling that we're definitely ending our time, not beginning for sure. You guys have been here. I can't believe, I really didn't think we would do the 3 hour plus again with you guys, but it is extended, and I so appreciate your willingness to just tackle it without limitations, and while you've been here in the Zoom Test Kitchen. So thank you. the biggest way, truly, Kevin and Sam, for for doing that. Please pass our thanks on to anybody that is aware of kind of who we are and what we're doing and all your efforts, and absolute huge congratulations on the conference itself. And I mean, it was a lot of people I know's highlight. A lot to be learned, and it helps make us better people. But it wasn't just it wasn't just an ingest of information and data. It was a witness, of a tool that we really want to get our claws on too. And that's not always the case. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, I will say, if I had to dive into conference, I totally believe you in the sense that, I would have to expect a little question mark at the top right corner of every section explaining, what it is and consequences and so forth, because as much as I want it, it does absolutely have this, kind of overwhelming appearance to a great degree, because there are so many, kind of moving parts and components. So I look forward to the day of being able to do it. I'm already spinning in my mind Zoom events test kitchen. We'll have to figure out how we consider that and make it happen one day, so that we can help the community that I'm so closely tied to ramp up and provide some solid exposure and training and so forth when it all comes to fruition. So and it's exciting times for sure. Any other questions? Sam, Kevin, any departing words or thoughts?
No, I think that's about it. I need to go start working on a slide deck for the webinar on Tuesday.
Yeah, we'll
through legal.
We'll be there to support you.
It was great being here with you guys again. We're happy to come every now and then. And, this is why we're here.
Yeah. Hey, thanks very much, guys. Sincerely, and
Thank you.
good luck next week in that. We'll be there listening, and we'll be in touch. Thanks so much for coming in the Zoom test kitchen, guys.
I'm actually going to give one chance for Soundfloss to ask a question if he's got one, because he just joined and got his video turned on. It feels like he wants to ask me something.
Okay.
What you got for
What do
me?
we got? Go ahead. You have a question?
Oh, no. Okay.
Okay. Think not. All right.
Bye, guys.
Very good.
Thanks,
Gentlemen,
everyone.
and everybody in the kitchen, thanks so much for coming, and we'll wrap up with some music slides, and we'll see you next week.